Chapter 1945. Right now we are indeed still alive. But if this continues, I estimate that in 2 days, our heads will be separated from our bodies. Southeast of the grassland, Tuli's troops, Tang Jian's tent. Yu Minghu looked at the leisurely Tang Jian and helplessly smiled. Tang Jian still had a leisurely attitude. Hearing this, he asked with a smile, "Why do you say that, Minghu?" Compared to the other courtiers in the current court, in terms of intelligence, Tang Jian might not be as good as Fang Xianling and Zhang Sun Wuji. In terms of decisiveness, he might not be as good as Du Ruhui. In terms of honesty, he might not even be as good as Wei Zheng. But regardless of whether he was in good times or bad, Tang Jian was always able to maintain an optimistic attitude. It was this optimistic attitude, coupled with his unique vision, that allowed him to have a place for himself in the imperial court of the early Tang Dynasty, where the stars were shining brightly. Yu Minghu was not as well-mannered as Tang Jian. He said worriedly, "Today, Tuli suffered a defeat. He and his trusted generals want to vent their anger on Duke. But according to this subordinate's estimation, in the next few days, Tuli will suffer even more defeats. According to their nature, I'm afraid that when the time comes, they will make things even more difficult for us." At this point, Yu Minghu deliberately paused. Seeing that there was still no reaction on Tang Jian's face, he could not help but continue. In today's battle, Tuli's troops lost 40,000 troops. Moreover, according to this subordinate's knowledge, the ones besieging Tuli's troops were only the other tribes of the grassland that rely on Xieli. They were not Xieli's elite wolf riders. Although there are still 2 days left until the 8th month, this subordinate estimates that if the 10-tribe coalition cannot completely take down Tuli's troops by tomorrow night, on the last day of the 7th month, Xieli will definitely gather his elite wolf riders and launch an all-out attack on Tuli's troops. Xieli has been able to control the grassland tribes for the past few years. The wolf riders under his command have unparalleled fighting strength. Moreover, the Turkic state preceptor, Wu Jie, is an expert of the great Grandmaster realm. If he also participates in the battle, Tuli's troops will definitely not last a day. At that time, even if Tuli does not kill us, if we fall into Xieli's hands, I am afraid it will be difficult for us to survive. As a warrior, Yu Minghu was even more aware than Tang Jian of the terror of a martial grandmaster expert. Although no matter how powerful a warrior was, he would not be able to defeat a well-trained army. However, if an expert like a martial grandmaster were to lead an army and personally lead this army into battle, then the combat power of this army would be raised by several levels. With the current situation of Tuli's troops, if Wu Jie were to lead a 10,000-man wolf cavalry army to attack, Tuli would never be able to resist. In the end, Xieli didn't want to consume his strength right now. Wu Jie and the wolf riders were his trump cards, and until the last moment, he wouldn't use them easily. Wu Jie is that Wu Jie who snuck into Cloud Mountain alone and led the Turkic wolf cavalry outside Longmen Pass to escape the encirclement of the Great Tang's 4 provinces? Hearing the name Wu Jie, Tang Jian's expression finally changed, raising his head and asking meaningfully. Yu Minghu nodded and replied, "It is that person." This subordinate heard that Wu Jie was able to resist Mo Huai and Zhang Zhongjian, 2 peak grandmaster experts, and smoothly escape from the encirclement of the imperial army. Later, the Marquis of Yong led an army to stop Wu Jie at Longmen Pass, but he was unexpectedly heavily injured. In the end, it was Taoist Master Xian Qing of Longhu Mountain who arrived in time to stop Wu Jie and the Turkic wolf cavalry. Otherwise, Longmen Pass would have been defeated. This person's martial arts are so high that he is probably invincible in the world. If he personally led an army to attack Tuli's troops, I'm afraid that the defenses here would collapse in an instant. Thus, Grand Duke, we must make plans as soon as possible. Tang Jian furrowed his brow in silence. He was not a member of the martial arts world, but he was born into a noble family, had experienced troubled times, and had mingled in the imperial court. He had some understanding of martial arts, so he naturally understood what Yu Minghu was saying. After a moment of silence, Tang Jian spoke. Make plans as soon as possible? We came to the grasslands with the Emperor's mandate. If we don't complete the mission, how can we face His Majesty? The only thing we can do now is to firmly believe that frost will fall on the grasslands in the next 2 days. Other than that, we have no other choice. Speaking of this, Tang Jian's eyes revealed a sense of determination. He said in a deep voice, "Moreover, this old man believes in His Majesty. I believe that the prophecy of frost falling in July will come true." During the late Sui dynasty, Tang Jian and Li Er were very good friends. The two of them had similar interests and were close friends. They regarded each other as confidants. Although they were now monarchs and ministers, Tang Jian still trusted Li Er unconditionally. Li Er naturally also trusted his old friend. Otherwise, he would not have handed over such an important task to Tang Jian. If the prophecy of frost falling in midsummer at the end of July came true, for Tang Jian, their purpose of coming to the grasslands would be more than half completed. When that time came, rumors about Xieli's misconduct caused longevity. Heaven's wrath would spread in all tribes of the grasslands. Those tribes of the grasslands who were originally disloyal to Xieli would probably rise up and resist Xieli's tyranny together. Pay attention to the news from Xieli's side. If he really does send Wu Jie to personally lead an army to encircle and annihilate Tuli's troops, we have to remind Tuli to make preparations. Tang Jian sighed and gave Yu Minghu an order. Yes, Duke. Yu Minghu naturally left to carry out the order. Taiyuan City, Tongfu Inn. Guard Lord? It seems like your status in the grasslands is not low. Earlier, when the 50 to 60 people had suddenly charged into the inn, Li Junxian had immediately dashed forward and grabbed the nearby Zhao Dian. At this moment, hearing the cries of the warriors downstairs, Li Junxian gripped Zhao Dian's neck and coldly laughed. Although his neck was gripped, Zhao Dian did not appear very panicked. He lightly snorted and mocked. I didn't think that the Grand Commander of 100 Cavalry, a Grandmaster expert, would actually take this Zhao, a scholar who doesn't even have the strength to truss a chicken, hostage. Should I say that Commander Li is lacking in grace, or is he lacking in martial virtue? What a fine lacking in martial virtue! Anyone else might have been goaded into letting Zhao Dian go, but Li Junxian was different. Although he was a Grandmaster, he was a member of the Imperial Court, not a member of the martial arts world. For him, completing the mission given by the Imperial Court was his #1 priority. As for martial virtue, was letting Zhao Dian go and having his 700 subordinates fight with 80 to 90 people a matter of martial virtue? Say what you want. Li Junxian nonchalantly chuckled, and then he threatened, "This general will not let his subordinates throw away their lives. Immediately have your men put down their weapons and surrender, or else." His right hand tightened around Zhao Dian's neck, and Zhao Dian immediately found it difficult to breathe. A few moments later, this fellow's face turned red. It was clear that Li Junxian had not used any small amount of strength. Ugh! Zhao Dian couldn't help but groan and slap away Li Junxian's right hand. Seeing this, Li Junxian slightly loosened his grip, and Zhao Dian hurriedly covered his neck with his hand and began to violently cough. Cough, cough. Commander Li truly has a good plan, but this Zhao will not let his subordinates surrender. At worst, we'll just die together. Ha ha. If I can kill a commander of 100 Tang cavalry, this Zhao Dian's life will be worth it. Contrary to Li Junxian's expectations, Zhao Dian was not intimidated by Li Junxian's threat. On the contrary, he was even more vicious than Li Junxian. After mocking Li Junxian, Zhao Dian looked down at his subordinates and shouted, "Kill, don't worry about this god." Li Junxian couldn't help but be taken aback. Zhao Dian's subordinates downstairs were also slightly stunned when they heard this. Everyone hesitated to move forward because although Zhao Dian had shouted this, if they really rashly went forward and caused Zhao Dian to lose his life, then what would be left for them after returning to the grassland would still be a dead end. Li Juanxian's eyes narrowed as he slightly clenched his right hand. At the same time, he warily and threateningly glared at the warriors downstairs. For a moment, the two sides were in a standoff. Zhao Dian's men did not dare to recklessly step forward, while Li Juanxian's men naturally would not attack for no reason. This was because while none of Zhao Dian's subordinates were top-class experts at the Grandmaster realm, the vast majority were at the Qi transformation realm. In terms of numbers, Zhao Dian's men had the absolute advantage. If they ignored Zhao Dian's life and attacked together, Li Juanxian's men would not be able to hold, not even if Li Junxian was a Grandmaster. In this situation, Grandmasters were not invincible existences. While Li Junxian could take on 10 of these Qi transformation experts alone, he could not take on 80 or 90 of them. Perhaps only a Grandmaster like Wu Jie could do this. Therefore, neither side dared to act rashly for the time being. This stalemate required a third force to break the stalemate. But this stalemate was completely acceptable to Zhao Dian. He had remained at the inn precisely to buy time for Xian Yi and Celestial Eagle to attack the posthouse. In truth, he had not known that the cavalry that had come to the inn was led by Li Junxian. Now that he knew, he could only rejoice. If he had not used himself as bait and sent 10-some people to stop Li Juanxian's men, there was a high chance that Li Juanxian's cavalry would have been able to effortlessly deal with them. And after dealing with his men, Li Juanxian's men would have continued to pursue Xian Yi, Celestial Eagle, and the rest of the group that had attacked the posthouse. In that case, his plan would have been completely exposed. Right now, all he needed to do was delay Li Junxian until Xian Yi succeeded. At that time, even if he was captured by Li Junxian, it would be fine, because Li Tai would already be in their hands. The offensive and defensive positions would be reversed. Chapter 1946. Quick, quick. In the darkness of the night, a group of over 100 people held torches as they galloped south on the main street of Taiyuan City. Their speed was very fast. Everywhere they passed, smoke and dust flew up. When the heavy horse hooves hit the green stone road, it made a da-da-da noise, waking countless people who had already fallen asleep along the way. The bailiffs who were patrolling the streets at night also noticed the loud noise, but before they could get close, the other party had already galloped far away on their horses. How could their 2 legs catch up to the 4 legs of the other party? They could only look at the other party's back and sigh helplessly. Motherf ***, where did this group come from? Galloping horses in the city at night, do they still want to live? Boss, should we report to the provincial governor and send people to arrest them? A group of bailiffs looked at the departing figures of the group, and one of them cursed. This is already the 3rd group. But the first 2 groups were the Imperial Army and the soldiers of the Bing Province barrack. This group looks like ordinary people. Another person chimed in. Pa. The leader of the bailiffs angrily slapped the 2 of them on the head and said, "Don't worry. All of you, shut up. Which ordinary family can afford to raise so many horses? Who dares to gallop on the streets at night in defiance of the curfew? This matter is not something we can deal with. Just report it to the provincial governor. Continue patrolling. Tonight is not peaceful, so keep your eyes open. Do you understand?" "Yes," the bailiffs roared in response. Just as the leader of the bailiffs had said, Taiyuan City was not destined to be peaceful tonight. First, Dugu Feiying led the Imperial Army from the north to the south. Then, Fang Gongting led several hundred cavalry from the Bing Province barracks in the northwest to the southeast. Now, another group of people had appeared out of nowhere and were heading south. These people treated the curfew policy of Taiyuan City as nothing, but at the same time, it was clear that these people were not ordinary people. After all, how could ordinary people be so bold? Moreover, The leader of the bailiffs had clearly seen this group of people coming from the direction of the Wang clan's ancestral home. This meant that this group was very likely from the Wang clan. Although they were bailiffs of the provincial government, they could not afford to offend the Wang clan. The leader of the bailiffs had guessed correctly. This group of people was the Wang family's hidden guards. The leader was the commander of the Wang family's hidden guards, Wang Chengwu. They had rushed to the Tongfu in under Wang Yu's orders. Firstly, they wanted to capture the innkeeper, Sun Dafu, or the owner, Gao Yong. Secondly, they wanted to see if Wang Li and the others were hiding in the inn. In terms of time, Wang Yu and Li Junxian had decided to send their men to Tongfu Inn at almost the same time, but in terms of distance, Li Junxian's temporary base, in Taiyuan City, was 4 to 5 times closer to Tongfu Inn than the Wang clan's ancestral residence. Thus, while Li Junxian's men were already fighting with Zhao Dian's men in the inn, Wang Qingwu's men were still on their way. But the arrival of Wang Qingwu's men was likely to be the key to breaking the stalemate in the inn. Within Tongfu Inn, both sides stood on opposite sides. Li Junxian's men had retreated to the corridor on the second floor, while Zhao Dian's men stood in the main hall on the first floor. As for Zhao Dian himself, he was naturally under Li Junxian's control. Chapter 1947. I am Wang Chengwu, commander of the Wang clan guard. Who is good sir? Do you know where shopkeeper's son is? Within Tongfu Inn, Wang Chengwu followed Li Junxian's voice to the corridor on the second floor. As he examined Li Junxian, he couldn't help but grimace. Although the man in the corridor didn't seem very old, he couldn't see through his cultivation level. What did this mean? This meant that this man was probably as strong as he was. Since when did Taiyuan City have another martial arts master of the Grandmaster realm? Wang Chengwu couldn't help but be confused. There were many martial artists in the world who were at the Qi transformation realm and below, but those who reached the Grandmaster realm were all renowned figures or great generals of the imperial court. The number of Grandmasters in each region could be counted on one hand, so Wang Chengwu wasn't making a fuss over nothing. So it was Commander Wang of the Wang clan. Li Junxian's eyes flashed upon hearing Wang Qingwu's identity, and he couldn't help but inwardly sigh in relief. Based on the information the 100 horsemen had gathered, Wang Chengwu was a member of the Wang clan's main branch, and the Wang clan's main branch and second branch were not on the same side. On the way to the inn, he had received news that Wang Kuei had fled in fear of punishment and that the entire Wang clan was searching for him. Although he didn't know why Wang Chengwu had brought people to Tongfu Inn, if Wang Chengwu wasn't working with Wang Kuei and Zhao Dian, then this was good news. With these thoughts in mind, Li Junxian turned to Wang Chengwu and said, "This general is 100 horseman Li Junxian, and I have been ordered by the emperor to secretly protect His Highness King of Wei in Taiyuan City. Commander Wang, these people are all spies hiding in Taiyuan City, and their leader is Zhao Dian. Commander Wang, you've come at just the right time. Why don't you help this general capture these people and send them to the provincial governor's residence?" Although he had sent someone to the provincial governor's office to ask for help in advance, the provincial governor's office was far away from the inn. It would take some time for the reinforcements from the provincial governor's office to arrive. No one knew what the situation would be like then. Rather than that, it was better to borrow the Wang clan's forces to capture Zhao Dian's group. What? Zhao Dian? Wang Chengwu's pupils constricted at the name Zhao Dian. Before nightfall, Duguxian had personally visited the Wang clan to inform Wang Yu of the secret letter that Han Lijing had brought to Taiyuan City and had asked Wang Yu to search the city for Zhao Dian. Wang Chengwu was one of Wang Yu's trusted aides, knew that all this turmoil in Taiyuan City was Zhao Dian's work. Thus, when he heard Li Junxian's report that Zhao's group, Wang's report, was Li's, so when he heard Li's that was SS, he's people's clan's group S's was? Li S was. S he. Wang S Wang. St. Li. St. Wang Duits Estes. The group of Wang family dark guards roared in agreement, then all of them drew their weapons and charged towards Zhao Dian's subordinates. Chapter 1948. Taiyuan Courier Station. A major battle was on the verge of breaking out. The Imperial Army was fighting against Xian Yi and the other Turkic spies on the eastern side of the courier station. The Imperial Army, under Dugu Xian's command, had already assumed the shape of a goose. As the strongest of the Imperial Army, Dugu Xian naturally stood at the very center of the formation. His direct opponent was the strongest of the enemy, Xian Yi. In terms of martial arts, both Dugu Xian and Xian Yi were at the initial stage of the Grandmaster realm. Dugu Xian's advantage lay in his exquisite swordsmanship. In terms of swordsmanship, there were no more than 10 people in the world who could defeat him. On the other hand, Xian Yi's advantage lay in his bizarre movement techniques and his innumerable sneak attacks. This morning, Dugu Xian had fought with Xian Yi in the southern part of the city. But at the time, Xian Yi's side had outnumbered him, and they had even used hidden weapons, poisons, and all sorts of underhanded sneak attacks. Only then had Dugu Xian been defeated and heavily injured. In a direct confrontation, Xian Yi might not have been a match for Dugu Xian. But there were no ifs in this world. In a confrontation between two armies, the most important thing was the final outcome, not the methods used in the process. The winner was king and the loser was a bandit. For Dugu Xian and Xian Yi, this was a battle where one of them would die. Only the victor could survive. However, Dugu Xian had yet to recover from his injuries, and he could only use 50% of his strength at most. As a result, his chances of victory were extremely slim. Clang! Dugu Xian raised the sword in his hand and poured his true qi into it. The sword hummed with a clang. This sword had a spirit, and the Dugu clan had invited the master swordsmith Zhang Crow to forge it. Although it was not as famous as the Crow 9 swords, it was still extremely sharp. Ever since Dugu Xian had made some small achievements in martial arts, this sword had always been by his side. The sword had no name, but the experts who had fallen to it were all top-notch experts who had long been famous. At this moment, this sword seemed to be able to sense the resolve in its master's heart. As the sword hummed, it began to tremble. This was excitement, or perhaps anxiety. Because he had been recovering from his injuries, Dugu Xian was not wearing armor, only a white robe and a black cloak. At this moment, Dugu Xian's long hair and cloak fluttered despite the lack of wind. A moment ago, he had looked like a weak and wounded soldier, but now, as he raised his sword and poured true qi into it, his aura quickly reached its peak. In terms of aura, he was no weaker than when he was at his peak. Sensing Dugu Xian's rapidly rising aura, Xian Yi could not help but be shocked. Has Dugu Xian really recovered his full strength? This didn't make any sense. Even if all the poison he had left in Dugu Xian's body had been cured by Gong Sun Liang, Dugu Xian could not have recovered to his peak state so quickly, unless he was a celestial immortal who was impervious to all poisons. Solitary Wind Swordsmanship. Xian Yi's mood was very complicated at this moment. He found it hard to believe, but Dugu Xian did not give him the chance to continue thinking. Dugu Xian stomped on the ground and soared into the air. His left hand formed a sword seal, and his right hand held the sword as he executed a series of complex sword moves. His speed in the air skyrocketed again, and he and his sword were like a stream of light in the night sky, stabbing straight at Xian Yi. This was the Dugu clan's sword technique, the solitary wind swordsmanship. In terms of sword moves, the solitary wind swordsmanship was not as exquisite as the Dugu 9 swords, but Dugu Xian had been practicing this sword technique for more than 10 years and had long reached the point of mastery. There was no absolute good or bad sword technique in this world. Once a sword technique reached the point of mastery, its power could not be underestimated. The main reason Dugu Xian had been able to use the first 7 moves of the solitary wind swordsmanship in such a short time was that this sword technique had already been deeply ingrained in his bones. He could create sword moves with just a wave of his hand. Secondly, when Li Zixuan had deduced the sword moves of the Dugu 9 swords and taught them to Dugu Xin, Dugu Xian had discovered that his solitary wind swordsmanship had some similarities with the Dugu 9 swords. The two complemented each other, and the solitary wind swordsmanship that Dugu Xian was using had been improved, and its power was far greater than before. Fast. Dugu Xian was originally only about 60 meters away from Xianyi, but he had become one with his sword. Under the stimulation of his sword move, he and his sword were as fast as flowing light. The distance of 60 meters was covered in an instant. Before Xianyi could recover from the shock on his face, Dugu Xian's sword had already arrived. Dugu Xian, who had yet to recover from his heavy injuries and had lost much of his strength, had chosen to take the initiative and attack. Moreover, his first attack was a sure kill strike without any fancy move. Before this, who could have imagined that Dugu Xian would attack in such a domineering and powerful manner? The Imperial Army soldiers were dumbfounded. Dugu Xian had been ambushed in the southern part of the city in the morning. He had been poisoned and severely injured, and he had almost died. Almost all the Imperial Army soldiers knew about this. In their view, after a day of recuperation, Dugu Xian had at most recovered a portion of his strength. There was no way he could have returned to his peak condition. But what was the situation now? The chilling sword aura that was wreaking havoc around Dugu Xian did not seem like something that a heavily injured person should be able to exude. The Turkic spies behind Xianyi were also dumbfounded. Before they came to the post house, hadn't Zhao Dian and Xianyi said that Dugu Xian had been heavily injured and was an arrow at the end of its flight? But the strength that Dugu Xian was displaying now did not seem like an arrow at the end of its flight at all. Roar! Although Dugu Xian's attack was very fast and caught him off guard, Xianyi was a grandmaster expert after all. After a brief moment of shock, Xianyi roared under the powerful threat of death. He did not draw his sword to block Dugu Xian's attack. Instead, he chose to retreat with all his might. Dugu Xian had gathered all his strength in this attack, and his sword momentum had already reached great mastery. Xianyi did not dare to meet this attack head-on in a hurry. Moreover, he was best at assassination and hidden weapons, not head-on combat. Therefore, his only choice now was to retreat and avoid the attack for the time being. When Dugu Xian's attack failed and he switched to another move, he would strike again and deal the fatal blow. Xianyi's lightness technique was superior to Dugu Xian's in the first place. Even though he had launched his attack after Dugu Xian's, he still managed to narrowly avoid Dugu Xian's sure kill strike. However, even though he managed to dodge, the other Turkic spies standing beside and behind him were not so lucky. Dugu Xian's attack was ferocious and indomitable. The surging sword aura around the sword was like a tangible blade, slashing directly at the people standing near Xianyi. Almost all the Turkic spies who did not manage to escape in time were injured by Dugu Xian's sword aura. In the blink of an eye, all 12 Turkic spies were injured and lying on the ground. What a pity! Dugu Xian shook his head slightly as he looked at the result of his attack. He could not help but feel disappointed. Theoretically speaking, it was impossible for him to use that attack in his current state. However, the unprecedented desperate situation had stimulated his body's huge potential. In addition, he had mobilized almost all the true qi in his body to use the first 7 moves of the Lonely Wind sword technique. That was why the power of that attack was so terrifying. Dugu Xian was well aware of his own situation. He knew that in his current state, he had no chance of defeating Xianyi if he attacked normally. He could not afford to waste his true qi. Dugu Xian had planned to take advantage of the fact that Xian Yi was not fully prepared to deal him a powerful attack. If this attack could seriously injure Xian Yi, then the rest of the Imperial army would be dealt with by themselves. There would be no need for him to do anything at all. However, Xian Yi had actually managed to dodge his sure-kill attack. That made things even more troublesome. On one hand, Xian Yi would definitely be on guard after that attack. Even if he used the same move again, he would not be able to injure Xian Yi in the slightest. On the other hand, that attack had used up most of his true qi. It would be very difficult for him to use another attack of the same power. Swish 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 swish. Xian Yi, who had dodged Dugu Xian's sure-kill attack, could not help but be shocked and enraged when he saw this scene. One had to know that he and Sky Eagle had brought people to ambush the post house, and they were already at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. Now that Dugu Xian had directly injured more than 10 of them, they were even more disadvantaged in terms of numbers. If Dugu Xian swung his sword a few more times, wouldn't all of his men be cut down to the ground? In the end, he would be the only commander without an army left on the battlefield. He could not allow Dugu Xian to slaughter his men wantonly. Shocked and enraged, Xian Yi did not stop after stabilizing himself. With a flick of his sleeves, 5 thin needles shimmering with cold light flew toward different parts of Dugu Xian's body. The speed of the needles flying through the air was even faster than when Dugu Xian had become one with his sword. Using offense as defense, he wanted to restrain Dugu Xian with a sharp attack so that the martial artists on his side who were below the Grandmaster realm would not be killed by Dugu Xian, a Grandmaster expert. Dugu Xian, who had already suffered in the south of the city in the morning, knew that Xian Ye's 5 needles must have been smeared with poison. Naturally, he did not dare to take them head-on. However, the 5 needles that Xian Yi had thrown out were coming from different directions, almost sealing off all his escape routes. It was impossible for him to rely on his body movement to dodge these 5 poison needles. 9 strategies of the Dugu sword, arrow-breaking style. Dugu Xian did not hesitate in the face of these 5 needles. He swung his sword and used the arrow-breaking style of the 9 strategies of the Dugu sword, which was specially designed to deal with hidden weapons. There was a flash of sword light in the air, and the 5 needles that came from different directions were all hit by Dugu Xian. Ding ding ding! The needles fell to the limestone floor with crisp sounds. Xian Ye's sneak attack had also failed. Chapter 1949. Let's go together. Use all the skills you're best at and end the battle quickly. Xian Yi was not discouraged by the failure of his sneak attack, because Dugu Xian seemed to have recovered to his peak state. Although he did not understand why, he had to admit it when the truth was right in front of him. Therefore, in order to prevent the situation from worsening, Xian Yi did not intend to continue fighting Dugu Xian alone. He roared at his men around him. Zhao Dian's men had not only gone through harsh and cruel training, but most of them were notorious scum of the martial arts world in the Central Plains before they joined the Turks. Each of them was more vicious than the other. In terms of head-on strength, they might not be as good as the Imperial army, but in terms of sneak attacks, the Imperial army was far inferior to them. And tonight's darkness was the best cover for their sneak attacks. Yes, sir. The men around Xian Yi answered loudly and then scattered. Those who were good at lightness skills simply jumped onto the roof. The 100 or so men spread out in a fan shape. Obviously, they understood what Xian Yi meant. Faced with the Imperial army that had already set up a formation, if they charged at them together, they would only be killed. Only by spreading out and disrupting the Imperial army's formation with some sneak attacks could they possibly break the formation. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. For a moment, all kinds of hidden weapons, such as hidden arrows, flying daggers, and poisonous needles, were shot out in all directions toward the Imperial army that had set up a formation. Other than that, a few of them lit up balls with fire and threw them at the Imperial army. Immediately, thick smoke rose from the Imperial Army's position. Clank, clank, clank. Metal clanked. The hidden weapons such as hidden arrows, flying daggers, and poisonous needles thrown by the Turkic spies did not cause much damage to the Imperial Guards. After all, the Imperial Guards were one of the most elite troops in Chang'an. They were dedicated to guarding the Imperial Palace. Every Imperial Guard was wearing excellent Mingguang armor. Ordinary swords and sabers could not penetrate their armor, let alone hidden arrows and flying daggers. Unless these hidden weapons happened to pierce the gaps between the joints of the armor, or directly hit the faces of the Imperial Guards. Physical attacks wouldn't work, but magical attacks would. The incense that the Turkic spies had thrown at the Imperial Army was clearly incense capable of releasing poisonous smoke. The Mingguang armor worn by the Imperial Army could block the attacks of ordinary hidden weapons, but it could not block the pervasive poisonous smoke. Everyone, cover your noses and mouths. We'll form teams of 3 and help each other. Don't let anyone pass. Dugu Xian had truly been caught off guard by this sudden turn of events. His original plan had been to use his life to hold down Xian Yi and leave the rest of the small fries to his Imperial Army. Although these Turkic spies were all powerful martial artists, the Imperial Army was skilled in battle formations. Once they were in formation, the Turkic spies would never be able to defeat the Imperial Army, even if they were twice as numerous. However, who would have thought that Xian Yi wouldn't play by the rules at all? He directly ordered everyone to scatter and fight on their own. Moreover, he used some dirty tricks. Therefore, he hurriedly shouted. Chapter 1950. 9 Swords of Dugu, Sword-Breaking Style. Taiyuan Courier Station, East Side. Dugu Xian gritted his teeth in the face of the dozen or so bolts of sword qi flying toward him. Mustering the remaining true qi in his body, he leaped into the air with his sword and executed the most complex and exquisite sword-breaking style of the 9 Swords of Dugu. The essence of the 9 Swords of Dugu was that the moment one saw a flaw in the opponent's moves, one would exploit it to strike first. Although Dugu Xian's 9 Swords of Dugu was not as proficient as his solitary wind swordsmanship, he had already grasped the sword will of the 9 Swords of Dugu. The 9 Swords of Dugu was a set of swordsmanship that placed great emphasis on sword will. The crux of it was the sword will and not the moves. In that instant, Dugu Xian had seen through the flaws in the swordsmanship of the dozen or so people. Infusing true qi into his sword, he executed the Dugu family's unique lightness technique and flew toward the Turkic spy at the very front. His speed was extremely fast. Seeing that Dugu Xian was advancing instead of retreating in the face of their attacks, the Turkic spy was first stunned, then overjoyed. But in the next moment the joy on his face froze, because Dugu Xian's sword had already arrived. This Turkic spy loved to advance prematurely, so he was at the very front. Moreover, the sword move he executed was also a sure kill move that only attacked and did not defend. Thus, the area around his left rib was completely exposed to the opponent. Dugu Xian arrived in front of the Turkic spy. With a flash, he dodged the other party's attack and turned to stab his sword at the other party's left rib. With the Turkic spy's current position, there was no way he could save him in time. Splat! This was the sound of a sharp blade piercing flesh. The sword in Dugu Xian's hand pierced through the Turkic spy's left rib and into his heart without any hindrance. Ah! The Turkic spy was only halfway through his wretched howl before he breathed his last and plummeted from the sky. Xian Yi, who was rushing towards Dugu Xian, and the others behind him all sucked in a breath of cold air when they saw this, and they couldn't help but slow down their advance. Fast. Too fast. From the moment he swung his sword to the moment he killed his opponent, it took less than 2 breaths of time. In other words, it was only the time of one move. Before this, who would have thought that Dugu Xian would be able to kill a martial arts expert at the peak of Qi transforming stage in a single move? Didn't they say that Dugu Xian was heavily injured and had less than a tenth of his strength left? But why was this guy even more ferocious than before? In fact, it was not that Dugu Xian had become stronger. On the contrary, his current state of strength was far inferior to when he had not been injured in the morning. There was no doubt about this. His current state only looked very fierce, but only he knew the actual state of his body. Whether it was injuring more than a dozen Turkic spies with a single sword or killing a Qi transformation stage expert with a single move, Dugu Xian had done it under the premise of overdrawing his own life potential. In addition, the solitary 9 swords and solitary wind swordsmanship were indeed exquisite and peerless supreme swordsmanship, and he had to pay a heavy price for it. Bam! The Turkic spy whose heart had been pierced by Dugu Xian's sword fell heavily to the ground. At the same time, Dugu Xian also landed on the roof. However, if one were to look closely, one would be able to see that his body was a little unstable at this moment. However, the night was very dark. Although there were many scattered torches on the ground, the light on the roof was still very poor. Thus, Xian Yi and the others did not notice this detail. Who else? Bring it on if you don't want to die. I, Dugu Xian, will accompany you to the end. Dugu Xian roared as he faced Xian Yi and the others with his sword in hand. There was a hint of heroism and arrogance in his voice. Apart from that, there was also a hint of the sorrow of a hero at the end of his road. Dugu Xian knew that he was truly an arrow at the end of its flight. He could not hold on for much longer. If the other party charged at him without regard for anything else, he would probably only be able to last a few rounds at most. However, the people behind Xian Yi were frightened out of their wits by Dugu Xian's arrogant roar. They all stopped their attacks and landed on the roof. Xian Yi was enraged when he saw this. He roared angrily and said, "You bastard!" He roared, "A bunch of idiots! He's just scaring you. Are you so easily frightened? Even if he wasn't injured, even if he was in peak condition, he still wouldn't be a match for us. All of you, attack together and finish him off as quickly as possible. Kill anyone who dares to take another step back." Xian Yi couldn't be blamed for being so angry. The situation on the battlefield was truly very unfavorable for them. Their 10-some experts were being held back by Dugu Xian alone, while the rest of them were fighting with the 200-some Imperial Army soldiers. The Imperial Army soldiers were in groups of 3, helping each other out. Their coordination was ingenious, and they fought very methodically. As a result, Xian Ye's men were at a complete disadvantage. In just a few moments, several of their men had already died at the hands of the Imperial Army. In such a situation, every time they lost a man, the pressure on the survivors would increase. This was because the Imperial Army soldiers who had been besieging Dugu Xian would go and help the other Imperial Army soldiers who were still fighting after they were freed up. This was a chain effect. Once they were at a disadvantage, it would only get worse and worse until all of them died here. Yes. The people behind Xian Yi couldn't help but be stunned when they heard this, but they quickly reacted. That's right. Didn't they already defeat Dugu Xian in the south of the city when he wasn't injured? Although they didn't know why Dugu Xian looked so fierce now, it was impossible for him to have recovered from the injuries he suffered in the morning. As such, their chances of defeating Dugu Xian again would be even higher. That's right, these people were the ones who had followed Xian Yi in the morning to ambush and injure Dugu Xian in the south of the city. Understanding this, the crowd gathered their morale. Under Xian Ye's lead, they once again raised their swords and stabbed at Dugu Xian. Dugu Xian groaned inwardly. He had taken the initiative to attack and kill a peak Qi transforming expert with one strike in order to intimidate these people and make them cower in fear. This way, he could buy as much time as possible for Li Tai to escape. However, Xian Yi didn't fall for it. He had no choice but to raise his sword and continue fighting. After all, the Imperial Army's victory wasn't assured yet. He still had to buy time for the Imperial Army. However, there were some things that couldn't be done with persistence. Dugu Xian's solitary 9 swords and solitary wind swordplay were exquisite, but these 2 swordplay only attacked and didn't defend. They consumed a lot of qi. After the previous 2 strikes, Dugu Xian's qi was almost depleted. Even the cleverest housewife couldn't cook a meal without rice. Even if he forcefully raised his qi, it would be difficult for him to withstand this round of attacks from Xian Yi and the others. This was indeed the case. After Dugu Xian found the weakness of the 2 Turkic spies and stabbed them with his sword, the other 2 Turkic spies stabbed at his back like lightning. At the same time, Xian Yi flicked his sleeve and 3 thin needles flew toward Dugu Xian's left and right shoulders, as well as 3 inches above his dantian. In the blink of an eye, Dugu Xian seemed to have fallen into a desperate situation. The situation changed so quickly that it caught everyone off guard. Dugu Xian used his light body movement technique to dodge, but due to the lack of qi, his movements were still half a beat too slow. The 2 long swords directly pierced through Dugu Xian's shoulder blades, while the 3 thin needles that flew towards him pierced into his left and right shoulders and abdomen respectively. Compared to the position that Xian Yi had originally aimed at, the needles were about an inch off target. Puff, puff, puff. The first 2 sounds were the sound of sharp swords piercing flesh. The last sound was the sound of Dugu Xian, who had yet to recover from his injuries, being injured again. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood, which contained bits of his internal organs. Although these 2 swords hadn't taken his life, they had aggravated his injuries. If he wasn't treated in time, he wouldn't be able to live for long. More importantly, the 3 thin needles that Xian Yi had driven into his body were coated with poison. In less than an hour, he would die from the poison. Can die. At this moment, Dugu Xian could clearly feel the strength in his body rapidly dissipating. He knew that this was a sign that he was about to fall into a coma or die. However, Dugu Xian was unwilling to fall just like that. This was because below the roof was still his comrade who had fought with him for many years. And behind him was Li Tai in the main building of the post house. No matter what, he couldn't allow Li Tai to fall into the hands of these Turkic spies. Dugu Xian, who was on the brink of death, suddenly let out a deafening roar. Then, the rapidly dissipating strength in his body miraculously gathered back together. Wielding his sword, he turned around and swept it across, beheading the 2 Turkic spies behind him who hadn't been able to react in time. However, Dugu Xian's series of movements had caused the 2 swords that had pierced into his shoulder blades to leave a deeper and wider wound on his shoulder. Blood flowed like a river. Blood instantly dyed Dugu Xian's entire back red. His eyes were red, and his hair was disheveled from the battle. He looked like a crazed demon. "General!" Dugu Xian's roar finally attracted the attention of the Imperial Army soldiers who were fighting with the Turk spies. Seeing Dugu Xian's figure swaying on the roof with 2 swords sticking out of his back, the eyes of the Imperial Army soldiers turned bloodshot, their eyes bulging out of their sockets. The man on the roof was not only their respected commander, but he had also ignored his injuries to face the enemy's strongest experts alone. How many generals in the world would cherish their soldiers so much? Protect the general! Quick! Protect the general! Thus, the Imperial Army soldiers gave up on fighting the Turkic spies and rushed toward Dugu Xian with all their might. That man was their spiritual pillar. They couldn't allow him to fall. Chapter 1951. Your Highness, the situation outside is very disadvantageous to us. Please evacuate the post house as soon as possible. We are willing to risk our lives to help Your Highness break out of the encirclement. The deafening roar of Dugu Xian, when he was heavily injured by Xian Yi and the others, clearly traveled to the room where Li Tai was staying in the central building of the post house. When the two imperial guards at the door heard the mournful, painful, and sorrowful roar, they couldn't help but change their expressions. A trace of anxiety and unease flashed across their faces, but after a moment of hesitation, they resolutely turned around and pushed open the door, solemnly cupping their fists in greeting to Li Tai. After realizing that something had happened to Dugu Xian, the first reaction of these two imperial guards was to rush out to rescue Dugu Xian. However, they couldn't help but recall what Dugu Xian had said before he left. Wang Tong, Guojian, the two of you stay here and protect His Highness. If the situation is bad, immediately evacuate with His Highness. Remember, even if you lose your lives, you must ensure His Highness's safety. Military orders must be obeyed. A soldier's duty was to obey orders. Whether it was in ancient times or modern times, it was always so. Guojian and Wang Tong both understood that the reason Dugu Xian had risked his life to fight the assassins outside was to ensure Li Tai's safety. If they went to rescue Dugu Xian now, not only would they fail to save Dugu Xian, they would also fail to live up to Dugu Xian's loyalty. Therefore, after a brief moment of hesitation and struggle, the two of them finally chose to carry out their orders and protect Li Tai as he safely evacuated from the post house. Before Dugu Xian had left, he had said that if the situation was bad, they were to immediately evacuate with Li Tai. Dugu Xian's painful and mournful roar meant that the situation was not good. It was very likely that the other party had already heavily injured Dugu Xian. If Dugu Xian, the top fighter of the Imperial Guard, was heavily injured, then it was only a matter of time before the rest of the Imperial Guard were defeated. The situation is not good? Inside the room, Li Tai abruptly stood up when he heard this. He looked at Guojian and Wang Tong and asked with a frown, "That loud roar just now, was it General Dugu?" A trace of pain flashed across Guojian and Wang Tong's faces. Soon after, Guojian cupped his fists and replied, It's the generals. There must be a peerless expert among them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to injure the general. Therefore, Your Highness, please follow us and retreat immediately." What? Li Tai was both shocked and furious when he received confirmation from the two of them. After pondering for a moment, he suddenly thought of something and shook his head. "No. I can't retreat like this." After saying that, Li Tai looked at Iron Egg beside him and said, "Iron Egg, don't we still have communication fireworks? Quickly take the communication fireworks to the roof and light them up. General Fei Ying and the others will definitely come to the post house's rescue when they see it." The teachers and students of Yanhuang College came to Taiyuan mainly to build a telegraph relay station. During the process, the teachers and students of the college couldn't stay together forever. After all, if they wanted to build a telegraph relay station as soon as possible, they had to work together. In order to prevent accidents from happening during the mission, Dugu Xian had given all the teachers and students of the college a communication fireworks before entering the city. This was to be used to call for help in an emergency. The reason why Li Tai didn't think of using the communication fireworks immediately was that tonight's attack was too sudden. Not only did he not think of it immediately, but Iron Egg and Dugu Xian also didn't think of it. "Your Highness, your body is priceless. How can you put yourself in danger?" Moreover, the general risked his life to fight the assassins despite his injuries in order to protect your safety. If you don't retreat, won't you be letting down the general's loyalty? Wang Tong's eyes were red as he cupped his fists to Li Tai and spoke in a rough voice. Iron Egg couldn't help but advise, "Qinke, Brother Wang is right. We won't be of much help if we stay here. Why don't we retreat first and then go to the provincial governor's mansion to get reinforcements? Otherwise, won't we be wasting General Dugu's efforts?" Li Tai shook his head resolutely. "No. I can't just watch General Dugu and these Imperial Army soldiers throw their lives away without doing anything. Moreover, there are still some teachers and students of our college staying in the post house. How can this prince abandon his teachers and classmates and flee alone? Li Tai used to be very afraid of death, but after staying in the college for more than a year, the word righteousness had appeared in his mind. Leaving aside the fact that Dugu Xian had dutifully protected them all this time, a month ago, when the Tuju estate preceptor Wu Jie had snuck into the college to steal the secret files, if not for Dugu Xian's timely arrival with his troops, Wu Jie would have very likely massacred the college. If that had happened, the casualties that night would have been even greater, and the losses would have been even greater. Based on this point alone, the college owed Dugu Xian a great favor. Not to mention, Dugu Xian himself had a very close personal relationship with Li Zixuan, the Yamacho of Yanhuang College. Therefore, although Dugu Xian was only a subject of the House of Li, Li Tai couldn't bear to see him die like this. Iron Egg heard this and couldn't help but fall silent. In fact, how could he bear to see Dugu Xian and the rest of the Imperial Army soldiers die? But in the current situation, they had to make a choice. No matter what, Li Tai couldn't have anything happen to him in Taiyuan City. Otherwise, more people would die because of him. Thinking of this, Iron Egg steeled his heart and quietly took a step back. Then, he prepared to chop Li Tai's back with his hand. Chapter 1952. Just as Li Tai was debating if he should stay behind and fight to the death with the Imperial Army and the Academy, Dugu Xian, who had been heavily injured on the east side of the courier hostel, finally could not hold on any longer. Facing forward, he fell straight to the ground. Dugu Xian felt his consciousness rapidly falling into darkness, and he gradually lost all feeling in his body. The dissipating power did not gather back. This time, a miracle did not happen. Or rather, a miracle had never happened before. The previous time was merely a final burst of consciousness from the dying Dugu Xian due to his strong willpower and conviction. General! When the Imperial Army rushing over saw Dugu Xian fall straight from the roof, they could not help but widen their eyes in anger. They quickened their steps, ignoring the Turkic spies chasing after them, and ran even faster in the direction of Dugu Xian's fall. Bam! Fortunately, the Imperial Guards managed to catch Dugu Xian before he hit the ground. Unfortunately, the strong collision and impact had caused the two swords in Dugu Xian's back to sink 2 inches deeper into his flesh. General! General! Please wake up! Seeing the man who was usually invincible like a god of war now covered in blood and barely breathing, the Imperial Army's eyes were red with grief. Quick! You guys take the general and retreat first. Leave this to me and the other brothers. A middle-aged man with a round face and short beard, looking very dignified, ordered the Imperial Army around Dugu Xian. Yes, Commander Hu. The Imperial Army replied. Then, they carefully pulled out the 2 swords on Dugu Xian's back and prepared to leave with Dugu Xian on their back. Old Hu. Don't worry about me. Quick, pull back the defense line and protect His Highness. We must hold on until Fei Ying and the others come back. At this moment, Dugu Xian, who was lying on the back of an Imperial Army soldier, spoke with difficulty. His voice was very soft and could easily be drowned out in the chaos of the battlefield. However, the middle-aged man with a round face and short beard happened to be beside him and naturally heard what he said. Quick, everyone, retreat immediately to Yiqing Pavilion and protect His Highness. The middle-aged general did not immediately reply to Dugu Xian's words. Instead, he shouted at the Imperial Army soldiers around him. The Yiqing Pavilion he mentioned was the name of the main building in the center of the courier station. It was also where Li Tai, Iron Egg, and the others were hiding. Yes. In the Imperial Army, Dugu Xian had the highest status, followed by Dugu Feiying. Other than the 2 brothers, this round-faced, short-bearded Hu general had the highest status. Thus, the Imperial Army would still respond to his orders. After giving the order, Hu Lang commanded the imperial army to continue evacuating with Dugu Xian. At the same time, he shouted to Dugu Xian, "General, no matter what you say, our brothers will not abandon you. This old Hu's life was saved by you back then. Even if I have to die, this old Hu will die before you. We must protect His Highness, and this old Hu must also save you." Hu Lang straightened his neck, his face filled with stubbornness. Under his lead, Dugu Xian was swiftly brought away from the battlefield. While Xian Ye's Turkic spies had tried to stop them, they were all cut down by Hu Lang and his imperial army soldiers. The imperial army quickly pulled back their defensive line and retreated toward the main building of the courier station. Strangely, Xian Yi and the others, who had severely injured Dugu Xian, did not intervene during this process. Instead, they stood on the roof and watched coldly. "Leader, why don't we pursue and kill Dugu Xian?" a Turkic spy asked in confusion. This was indeed the best opportunity to kill Dugu Xian. "There's no need." Xian Yi shook his head and confidently said, "Dugu Xian is already dead. Moreover, our goal is about to be achieved." Chapter 1953. Okay. Brother Wang, Brother Gua, take care of yourselves. My master and I will definitely treat you to a drink after this. In the room of the Taiyuan post station, Iron Egg finally looked at Wang Tong and Guojian and said solemnly after a short hesitation and struggle, although he really wanted to have a big fight with this master who was at the peak of the Qi-forming realm in front of him, because only through a real life and death battle could his martial arts improve faster. Just like when he fought against Ming Huan in Guan City. Not long after that battle, he broke through to the Qi-forming realm. However, Iron Egg knew very well that this was not the time for him to show off his bravery. Protecting Li Tai's safety was the most important task at the moment. He had to make a choice. Haha. Good. To be treated to a drink by Marquis I, Wang Tong, have not lived in vain. Brother Iron Egg, I'll remember what you said. Haha. I'll remember it too. Hearing this, Wang Tong and Guojian laughed heartily and said loudly. However, there was a trace of sadness in their laughter. Obviously, they both knew that if they wanted to successfully protect Li Tai and Iron Egg in front of them, they had to risk their lives. After this battle, there was a high chance that they would lose their lives. And the drink that Iron Egg promised was something they could only drink in their next lives. Humph. You want to leave? None of you can leave tonight. The conversation between Iron Egg, Wang Tong, and Guojian naturally fell into the ears of the masked man in black. He sneered and rushed directly toward Li Tai, who was standing at the back. Humph. Are you treating us brothers as if we don't exist? Seeing this, Wang Tong and Guojian both raised their Mo swords and slashed at the masked man in black. A trace of contempt flashed in the eyes of the masked man in black. He raised his left sleeve slightly, and two flying daggers with cold light flew out from his sleeve. Then, there were two ear-piercing sounds of metal colliding. The Mo swords in Wang Tong and Guojian's hands met the two flying daggers of the masked man in black in the air. A huge force passed through the body of the daggers and quickly backfired on the owners of the Mo swords. Both of them felt their wrists go numb, and their right hands holding the Mo swords were almost shaken loose. This masked man in black was a flying dagger master. Most importantly, the momentum of the two Mo swords was greatly reduced after passing through this layer of obstruction. On the other hand, the black-clothed man increased his speed and dashed towards Li Tai's position at an even faster speed. Based on Wang Tong and Guojian's current speed, it was impossible for them to stop the black-clothed man before he caught Li Tai. I didn't want to fight, but now it seems that I have no choice but to fight. Tai Dan, who was standing by the side, could clearly see that the strength of the black-clothed man was not something that Wang Tong and Guojian could handle. Even if the two of them fought with their lives on the line, they would not be able to delay the black-clothed man until Li Tai and Tai Dan escape. Therefore, Iron Egg drew out the long sword at his waist and took the initiative to meet the masked man in black who was rapidly approaching them. This was the second move of the 9 Taishan swords. The masked man in black sneered and changed his direction midway. He decisively abandoned Li Tai and turned to stab at Iron Egg with his sword. It turned out that the previous move was just a cover to lure Iron Egg to take the initiative to make a move. In this way, he could find the flaw in Iron Egg's swordsmanship after Iron Egg hurriedly made a move and kill Iron Egg directly. At this critical moment, Iron Egg's eyes flashed. He raised the long sword he borrowed and changed his swordsmanship midway. His sword was like a magnet, firmly sucking Ming Huan's long sword. His whole body leaned back, forming a small angle with the ground. The 38th move of the Taiji swordsmanship, Phoenix Wings spread. Iron Egg's wrist moved slightly and twirled the sword twice. The masked man's long sword strength was immediately deflected by Iron Egg, sacrificing oneself to follow others, failing to lead in, pulling out 1,000 pounds with 4 tails. Chapter 1954. I'm sorry. With your insignificant strength, I can defeat you fair and square. But this is a serious matter. Lord Guard will not allow any mistake. Besides, I'm in a hurry. In the guest room of the Iching Pavilion in the Taiyuan Courier Station, the black-clothed masked man sneered. He retreated to the door and opened it. He reached out and took out a lit incense stick. After closing the door, the black-clothed masked man returned to the room. Seeing Iron Egg's puzzled expression, the black-clothed masked man explained, "This is called soul-breaking incense. It has a very light smell and is difficult to detect. Those who are poisoned by this incense will be poisoned in a quarter of an hour. When the poison takes effect, your body will be as soft as cotton and you will lose all your inner strength. Now, you are all lambs waiting to be slaughtered." Poof! As he spoke, the black-clothed masked man first broke the half-burnt incense in his hand. Then, he thrust his sword forward and pierced Wharton's heart without missing a beat. With Wharton's current state, he was unable to dodge the black-clothed man's sword, so he could only watch as the long sword pierced his chest. Under the effect of the soul-severing incense, he didn't feel any pain at first, but when the sharp sword was about to touch his heart, he felt a trace of throbbing and intense pain, but in the next moment, all of his consciousness completely dissipated. Just as the masked man had said, at this moment, Tai Dan, Li Tai, Guojian, and Wang Tong were like lambs that were waiting to be slaughtered, and the black-clothed masked man was the butcher that held the butcher's knife. When facing this butcher, the lambs could only wait for death and didn't have the slightest ability to resist. "Brother Wang! Old Wang!" Seeing that Wang Tong was killed, Iron Egg and Guojian's eyes were filled with anger. If looks could kill, the masked man in black would have been cut into countless pieces by their looks. "Hey! Don't worry, it will be your turn soon." The black-clothed man sneered, and pulled out his sword from Wharton's chest. He then turned to look at Guojian, who was closer to him. In the face of death, Guojian's face showed no signs of fear. He had already stabbed his saber into the ground to support his body. When he saw the black-clothed man walking towards him, he glared angrily at him, his face full of disdain. The men of the Imperial Army do not fear death. All of them were indomitable men. We're not like, you son of a bitch, betraying your own race, betraying your ancestors, and working for the dogs-hit Turks. If you're alive, there will be countless people poking at your spine. If you're dead, there will be countless people digging up your grave so that you'll never be able to rest in peace. Because of the absolute soul fragrance, Guojian was currently very weak. He used his strong willpower to resist the medicinal properties of the absolute soul fragrance, preventing himself from falling unconscious. His voice was very soft, but every word he said was incomparably clear and firm. After all that had happened, most of the Imperial Army soldiers knew that the people who had been stirring up trouble in Sorespeak City were probably Turkic spies. Thus, before his death, Guojian had been unable to restrain himself from cursing the men in black. "You're courting death!" Guojian's words had thoroughly enraged the black-clothed man. Eyes wide with rage, the black-clothed man lunged forward and slashed his sword at Guojian's neck. "Big Brother Guo!" A popping sound could be heard as blood splattered everywhere. A head rolled onto the ground right next to Bruiser's feet. Bruiser staggered backward a couple of paces, his face filled with grief and boundless rage. He couldn't stop himself from trembling, not from fear, but from rage that came from the depths of his heart. Seeing his companions mercilessly slaughtered by the black-clothed man one after another, Iron Egg's rage had reached a boiling point. But at this time, anger was of no use. Not only could he not use any of his jinchi, he also had to focus all his energy on resisting the effects of the absolute soul fragrance to keep himself awake. Without the absolute soul fragrance, even if he knew that he was no match for the black-clothed man, Iron Egg would have charged forward with his sword. Moreover, if it was a one-on-one fight, Iron Egg believed that he had a chance of winning. When Li Zixuan had just returned from Longhu Mountain, he was only at the late stage of qi refining. However, with the 9 Taishan swords and Taiji sword technique, he was able to defeat Snake King, who had been in the Grandmaster realm for many years. As a personal disciple of Li Zixuan, Iron Egg believed that with his understanding of these two sword techniques, he still had a chance to fight the black-clothed man head-on, because the 9 Taishan swords and Taiji sword technique were supreme sword techniques that could allow one to surpass the level of an enemy. Moreover, these two sword techniques, one for offense and one for defense, could achieve unexpected results if used skillfully. Unfortunately, there were not so many ifs in this world. The absolute soul fragrance that the black-clothed man had lit before entering the room had already strangled all the ifs and uncertainties in the cradle. There was no suspense in this battle at this point. "Humph! Little guy, it's your turn next." After killing Guojian, the black-clothed man glanced at Iron Egg, and then walked towards Iron Egg with his sword. Chapter 1955. Stop! In the room, although these two words were said very softly, they clearly reached everyone's ears. At the very beginning, the masked man in black even thought that he had misheard, but not long after, the same voice rang out in the room again. This made him believe that there was indeed someone shouting, "Stop!" He quickly became alert and used his eyes to look for suspicious people in the room. This room was not big. Other than him, Iron Egg, and the 2 fallen Imperial guards, there was only Li Tai in the room. But Li Tai had been poisoned by the soul-breaking incense and should have fainted. After all, he was the only one in the room who did not know martial arts. His resistance to the soul-breaking incense was definitely the weakest. If that was the case, then who was the person who shouted, "Stop"? The masked man in black coldly scanned every corner of the room. He even looked at the bodies of the 2 Imperial guards, but in the end, he found nothing. Finally, the masked man's eyes fell on the innermost corner of the room. Li Tai had been hiding in that corner since the beginning. But the masked man in black could not help but be shocked by what he saw. He saw that Li Tai, who had fainted, actually stood up shakily and strenuously. He faced the masked man in black and Iron Egg with a face full of anxiety and anger. Obviously, he was the one who had shouted, "Stop," earlier. In the face of the masked man in black, Li Tai and Iron Egg were both poisoned by the soul-breaking incense and had no ability to resist. Under such circumstances, would Li Tai's "stop" really work? Obviously not. A hint of a smile appeared at the corner of the black-clothed man's eyes. He said to Li Tai indifferently, "Your Highness, these people are just servants. If you kill them, then kill them. Why are you in such a hurry?" As he spoke, he retracted his gaze, raised his sword, and continued to slash at Bruiser's neck. "Stop! In the room, although these two words were said very softly, they were clearly heard by everyone. At the very beginning, the masked man in black even thought that he had misheard, but not long after, the same voice rang out in the room again. This made him believe that there was indeed someone shouting, "Stop!" He quickly became alert and used his eyes to look for suspicious people in the room. The room was not big. Other than him, Iron Egg, and the two fallen Imperial guards, there was only Li Tai in the room. But Li Tai had been poisoned by the soul-breaking incense and should have fainted. After all, he was the only one in the room who did not know martial art. His resistance to the soul-breaking incense was definitely the weakest. If that was the case, then who was the person who shouted, "Stop"? The man in black coldly scanned every corner of the room. He even examined the bodies of the two Imperial guards, but in the end, he found nothing. Finally, the man in black's eyes fell on the innermost corner of the room. Li Tai had been hiding there from the beginning. Just one look and the man in black could not help but be shocked. He saw that Li Tai, who had been unconscious, actually stood up shakily and strenuously. He faced the man in black and Iron Egg with a face full of anxiety and anger. Obviously, he was the one who had shouted, "Stop," earlier. In the face of the man in black, Li Tai and Iron Egg were both poisoned by the soul-breaking incense and had no ability to resist. Under such circumstances, would Li Tai's "stop" really work? Obviously not. A hint of a smile appeared at the corner of the black-clothed man's eyes. He said to Li Tai indifferently, "Your Highness, these people are just servants. If you kill them, then kill them. Why are you in such a hurry?" As he spoke, he retracted his gaze, raised his sword, and continued to slash at Bruiser's neck. Chapter 1956. The dagger in Li Tai's hand actually had a great history. In the early years of Wuda, the Turks had invaded the borders of the Great Tang on a large scale. At the time, Li Er had still been the king of Qin, leading an army to attack the Turks from the north. He had won one battle after another, and after killing the leader of one of the tribes, Li Er had seized an extremely exquisite dagger. From that moment on, this dagger had been used to cut up many cattle and sheep in his military career. In Li Er's hands, this dagger was used more as a cutlery than as a tool for killing. Later, Li Er gave this dagger, which symbolized victory and glory, to one of his favorite sons, Li Tai. At that time, Li Tai was only 4 or 5 years old. He only thought that this dagger was pretty and fun. After the initial novelty, he did not care about it anymore. This time, he followed the teachers and students of the academy to the north to build a telegraph relay station. This was the first time in his life that Li Tai had traveled so far. Therefore, he also took this dagger that Li Er gave him as a self-defense. However, neither he nor Li Er had expected that this dagger from the Turk tribe would appear in the battle against the Turk spies by pointing at Li Tai. But no matter what, Li Tai's action of risking his life for the sake of justice was not a disgrace to the dagger that symbolized victory and glory. Good. Very good. Then I will give Prince Wayface and let this kid go for the time being. In the room, seeing that Li Tai was really going to threaten him with his life, the man in black did not dare to take the risk. He sneered and moved the long sword away from Iron Egg's head. Just as Li Tai had said, if they didn't have Li Tai as a hostage, once the Great Tang government's reinforcements arrived, all of them who had launched a sneak attack on the post house would have died here. Furthermore, even if they managed to evacuate the post house before the Tang Empire's reinforcements arrived, their mission would still be considered a failure if they failed to capture Li Tai alive. This was because Zhao Dian might have already fallen into the hands of the Tang Empire's officials. If they failed to capture Li Tai alive as a hostage, Zhao Dian's life would be in danger. The dagger in Li Tai's hand actually had a great history. In the early years of Wuda, the Turks invaded the borders of the Tang Empire. At that time, Li Er, who was still the king of Qin, led an army to attack the Turks from the north. Along the way, He won one battle after another, and could be said to be an irresistible force. After killing the leader of a tribe, Li'er seized an extremely exquisite dagger. Since then, Li'er's military career, this dagger had been used to dissect many cattle and sheep. In Li'er's hands, this dagger was more used as a tableware rather than a tool to kill. Later, Li'er bestowed this dagger, which symbolized victory and glory, to one of his favorite sons, Li Tai. At that time, Li Tai was only 4 or 5 years old. He only thought that this dagger was pretty and fun. After the initial novelty, he did not pay attention to it anymore. This time, he accompanied the teachers and students of the academy to the north to build a telegraph relay station. This was the first time that Li Tai had traveled so far in his life. Therefore, he also took this dagger that Li'er had bestowed upon him as a self-defense. However, neither he nor Li'er had expected that this dagger from the Turks would appear in the battle against the Turk spies by pointing at Li Tai himself. But no matter what, Li Tai's act of risking his life to fight for justice today was not a disgrace to this sword that symbolized victory and glory. Chapter 1957. Silence. Outside Iching Pavilion, the Imperial Army and the Turkic spies had been locked in a fierce battle a moment ago, but with the roar of the man in black, the noisy courtyard instantly fell silent. Both sides turned their gazes to the man in black and Li Tai standing in front of him. "Your Highness!" Seeing that the man in black had taken Li Tai hostage, the Imperial Army was alarmed. Without needing Hu Longjiang's orders, the Imperial Army automatically changed their formation and completely surrounded the man in black and Li Tai. At this moment, the actions of the man in black and Li Tai were rather strange. Li Tai was holding a dagger, but the dagger was pointed at his neck. The man in black had placed his sword on Li Tai's shoulder, but for some reason, the sword was still some distance away from Li Tai's neck. At first glance, it seemed like the man in black did not want Li Tai to die. No matter how one looked at it, it was strange. It was like a robber holding a hostage. The hostage wanted to die, but the robber wanted to protect the hostage. It didn't make sense at all. However, such a thing that defied common sense had really happened. Protect His Highness. At this moment, Hu Longjiang reacted and shouted loudly. The Imperial Army pointed their swords at the man in black, who had just come out of Iching Pavilion. As for the Turkic spies behind them, they could no longer care about them. If something happened to Li Tai, their mission in Taiyuan would be considered a complete failure, and none of them would be able to escape Li'er's punishment. However, because the man in black had placed his sword on Li Tai's shoulder, the Imperial Army did not dare to make any moves. After all, Li Tai's life was still in the hands of the man in black. "Ha! Tianying, you've succeeded!" At this moment, a thin masked man flew down from the roof of Iching Pavilion. It was Xian Yi, who had been fighting with Dugu Xian earlier. Xian Yi landed steadily beside the black-clothed man. After glancing at Li Tai, who was standing in front of the black-clothed man, Xian Yi's hanging heart immediately returned to his stomach. He let out a light breath and smiled faintly. That's right, the black-clothed man who had sneaked into the room to capture Li Tai was Zhao Dian's second-in-command, Tianying. Previously, Xian Yi had led his men to attack the post-house from the front, attracting most of the Imperial Army to the east side of the post-house. Even Dugu Xian, the commander of the Imperial Army who had yet to recover from his injuries, had personally left his room to participate in the battle. Thus, there were very few Imperial Army soldiers left to protect Li Tai. This gave Sky Eagle a chance to sneak into Iching Pavilion. Seeing Xian Yi fly over, Sky Eagle nodded in greeting before replying, "This is all thanks to you and your brothers holding back the majority of the Imperial Army's forces. Let's take King Wei away now and go back to rescue the guard master." Xian Yi nodded and said, "That's how it should be." At this moment, Sky Eagle coldly said to Li Tai, "Your Highness King Wei, it's time for you to fulfill your promise, right?" This seat has no intention of harming your life. As long as you get these Imperial Army soldiers to open a path for us to leave, this seat will naturally protect you. Your status is noble, and your body is priceless. You shouldn't be willing to exchange your life for ours, right? In principle, Sky Eagle didn't want Li Tai to die because he needed to use Li Tai as a hostage to rescue Zhao Dian. However, this didn't mean that he didn't dare to kill Li Tai. If Li Tai didn't cooperate with him, and instead recklessly ordered the Imperial Army to attack the people they had brought with them, Sky Eagle didn't mind dragging Li Tai down with him before he died. After all, he was about to die. He couldn't care less about the mission. All of you, disperse and let them go. Li Tai also understood that he and Sky Eagle were at most in a relationship of checks and balances. Sky Eagle didn't dare to kill him casually, and he didn't want to throw his life away so easily. As long as they didn't completely fall out with each other, they could coexist peacefully. However, once they did, it would be a life and death struggle, and both sides would suffer great losses. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, Li Tai finally gave the order. Chapter 1958. Wow! Father, when did you buy such a big manor? Near Dragon Mountain, after passing through several hills and woods, Wang Kuei, Wang Hong, Wang Xinyuan, and the others saw a vast and huge manor in the wilderness. The manor covered an area of at least a dozen acres. At this time, the sky was dark, and the interior of the manor was lit with candles, stone lamps, and bonfires. Under the illumination of these lights, they could vaguely see the outline of the manor. At this time, Wang Hong's eyes widened, and he couldn't help but exclaim. On the way, Wang Kuei roughly told Wang Hong about the manor's training of a group of assassins, but he didn't go into detail. For example, the size of the manor and the number of assassins. He didn't tell Wang Hong about it. The main reason was that talking to Wang Hong was too infuriating. If he didn't pay attention, he would be angered half to death. Therefore, after seeing this huge manor, although Wang Hong was somewhat prepared, he still couldn't help but be surprised. Yes, master. As soon as Wang Hong's voice fell, two young men in black suddenly jumped down from the trees on both sides of the road. The two men held weapons and landed in front of Wang Kuei and the others. Just as they were about to go forward and ask, one of them recognized Wang Kuei through the light of the torch in front of the crowd. He looked serious and quickly put away his weapon. He stepped forward and saluted Wang Kuei. "Greetings, master." "Greetings, master." Another warrior quickly walked over and cupped his fists in salute to Wang Ku. Wang Kuei didn't answer Wang Hong's previous question. Instead, he nodded lightly at the two men in front of him and said, "Shang Liang, Su Lei? Are the two of you on night duty tonight?" "Yes." The two men nodded in response. Wang Kuei softly said, and then ordered, "Let's go. Enter the manor, and then let White Bear quickly gather everyone in the manor in the martial arts field." "Yes." This subordinate obeys. Hearing Wang Kuei's order, the two men felt that something big was about to happen. They quickly saluted, bowed, and took the order. "Wow! Father, when did you buy such a big manor?" Near Dragon Mountain, after passing through several hills and woods, Wang Kuei, Wang Hong, Wang Xinyuan, and the others saw a luxurious and huge manor in the wilderness. The manor covered an area of at least a dozen acres. At this time, the sky was dark, and the manor was lit with candles, stone lamps, and bonfires. Under the illumination of these lights, they could vaguely see the outline of the manor. At this time, Wang Hong widened his eyes and could not help but exclaim. On the way here, Wang Kuei roughly told Wang Hong that the manor had trained a group of assassins, but he didn't go into detail. For example, he didn't tell Wang Hong the size of the manor and the number of assassins. The main reason was that talking to Wang Hong was too infuriating. If he didn't pay attention, he would be angered to death. Therefore, after seeing this huge manor, although Wang Hong was somewhat prepared, he still couldn't help but be shocked. "Yes, master." As soon as Wang Hong's voice fell, two young men in black suddenly jumped down from the trees on both sides of the road. The two of them held weapons and landed in front of Wang Kuei and the others. Just as they were about to go forward and ask, one of them recognized Wang Kuei through the light of the torch in front of the crowd. He looked solemn and quickly put away his weapon. He stepped forward and saluted Wang Kuei. "Greetings, master." Chapter 1959. Da. On the small path outside the mysterious manor, the sound of hooves thundered. Under the leadership of Han Lijing, the imperial army galloped toward Wang Kuei's men. Although the path was not wide and could only accommodate 3 warhorses side by side, the 200 imperial army soldiers marched in unison with great momentum. The charging formation of 200 men should have the momentum of 1,000 men. Bai Xiong, Qi Zhe, and the others, who were rushing over to spy on the enemy, could not help but turn pale with fright when they saw this momentum. At this moment, they were still 400 to 500 feet away from the imperial army, but Bai Xiong did not hesitate to turn his horse around and shout loudly, "Stop! Soldiers are attacking! Soldiers were coming to attack! Giddy up!" Although White Bear was a martial arts master at the peak of Qi transforming stage, he did not have the courage to fight against such a well-trained cavalry. Even if he was a martial arts master in the Grandmaster realm, he would not dare to fight head-on with such a large cavalry formation, not to mention that he was at the peak of Qi transforming stage. Unless these cavalrymen were all ordinary people who did not know martial arts. But was that possible? Obviously, it wasn't realistic. Therefore, White Bear King did not hesitate to turn around and retreat when he saw this. Qi Zhe and the others beside him naturally did not continue to stay when they saw him retreat. They hurriedly turned their horses around and galloped towards Wang Kuei. "Soldiers? How could the soldiers have caught up to us so quickly?" Wang Kuei, who was not far away, couldn't help muttering to himself in confusion after hearing White Bear's loud shout. "Everyone, listen up. Prepare to meet the enemy. For every soldier you kill, you'll be rewarded 100,000 yuan." At this critical moment, even though Wang Kuei was puzzled, he could only temporarily suppress the doubts in his heart. He waved his hand at the group of assassins and guards behind him and ordered loudly. At the same time, he, Wang Xinyuan, and Wang Hong quietly turned their horses around and walked towards the back of the group. As the leaders of this team, they naturally couldn't charge at the front. Kill. These people had been recruited by Wang Kuei from all over the country and had been willing to work as assassins under Wang Kuei for so many years. They were people who recognized money but not fate. Now that they heard Wang Kuei say that they would be rewarded with 100,000 yuan for every soldier they killed, their eyes all turned red and they rushed forward with their knives without any regard for their lives. At this moment, they didn't even have time to think about why there were soldiers here. Why would Wang Kai go against the government? Also, once they killed the soldiers, what would happen to them in the future? Of course, not everyone did not think about these problems. Some of the smarter ones had already predicted the current situation when Wang Kuei said on stage that he would lead them to build a career together. There was no war going on in the Great Tang, but Wang Kuei had said that he would lead them to make a name for themselves. In this situation, what else could they make a name for themselves besides rebellion? Although some people had expected this, they had been under Wang Kuei's strict training for a long time. They had long lost the concept of a country. Although they were a little surprised at first, they did not reject the idea of rebellion. After all, they were all from poor families. None of them wanted to return to the past and continue living in poverty. Kill. Chapter 1960. Escape? Without these assassins and guards, what's the use even if we escape? This is the family property that I have accumulated for more than 10 years. On the path outside the mysterious manor, after hearing Wang Xinyuan's words, Wang Kuei's face couldn't help but show a trace of bitterness. He sighed and said with tears in his old eyes, "Only the heavens knew how much effort and price he had paid to secretly cultivate this group of assassins behind the back of his family. Now that he had seen these assassins die one by one under the blades of the Imperial Army, the old man's heart could be said to be dripping blood. This was because these assassins were the assets he had painstakingly accumulated over the years. They were also the capital he had to make a comeback in the future. He escaped from the Wang family tonight. The reason why he chose to come here first was that he wanted to take these assassins to join Zhao Dian. With these assassins and the money he carried, he had the capital to cooperate with Zhao Dian. However, things did not go as he wished. The assassins that he had cultivated for many years were likely to all die here tonight. How could Wang Kuei be willing to accept this? "Grandfather, we can spend money to find people if they are gone, but nothing must happen to you. Once we fall into the hands of the government, there is only a dead end. There will be no more hope. Let's escape quickly." Seeing that Wang Kuei was still sighing sadly, Wang Xinyuan couldn't help but urge him. Wang Hong also hurriedly said at this time, "Yes, father. You brought so much money this time. With money, where can't we find masters in the martial arts world? If these people are gone, then they are gone. Right now, it's more important to escape. Your son is only 32 this year. I haven't lived enough. I don't want to die so young." This guy, it was fine if he didn't open his mouth. Once he opened his mouth, he could anger people half to death. Wang Kuei was so angry that he almost couldn't catch his breath. The old man stroked his chest and glared angrily, raising his hand to hit his disappointing son. Wang Hong, however, had the foresight. Before Wang Kuei raised his hand, he had already run away. "Father, there's no time to lose. Your son will go to the front to help you open the way. You and Xinyuan quickly follow." Wang Hong naturally didn't run toward the Imperial Guards. He ran toward the hill on the left side of the road. Before this guy ran away, he didn't forget to tell Wang Kuei, You evil creature!" Wang Kuei was so angry that he almost vomited blood, but he had already calmed down. He knew that the wisest choice at this moment was to follow Wang Xinyuan's advice and escape from the forest on both sides before his men were completely defeated. Therefore, he turned around and shouted to the guards not far away, "White Bear Cheese, quick! Retreat!" Yes. Soon, under the escort of several guards and killers, Wang Kuei and Wang Xinyuan successfully climbed up the hill. After meeting up with Wang Hong on the hill, they went into the dense forest. Not only were the hills on both sides of the road overgrown with weeds, the trees were also dense. Coupled with the fact that it was dark at night, it would be difficult for the Imperial Guards to find them if they were to sneak in like this. In the field, Han Lijing also noticed the abnormality here. He could vaguely see a few figures darting into the forest beside the road. He knew something was wrong and quickly shouted, "Someone is escaping! Who, I'll leave this place to you. I'll go after them." After saying that, without waiting for Zhao Era's agreement, Han Lijing jumped up the hill on the left side of the road. At the same time, he put the Modeo back on his waist and took the bow and arrow from his back. After that, he knocked the arrow and shot 3 arrows in a row in the direction of the footsteps in the forest. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The sky was dark and the forest was dense. Han Lijing didn't care whether the 3 arrows hit their targets or not. He ran in the direction of Wang Kuei and others while continuing to shoot arrows into the forest from the quiver. Chapter 1961. Haha. I didn't think that the mighty King of Wei would end up as our prisoner. Lord Wei's schemes are as wondrous as Kongming's. On the streets to the north of Sourcepeak City, Sky Eagle and Xian Yi were galloping wildly on their horses. Li Tai was riding on the same horse as Xian Yi. Sky Eagle couldn't help but feel heroic as he looked at Li Tai on his horse. Before they came, They actually had a certain degree of suspicion towards Zhao Dian's plan. However, due to Zhao Dian's usual prestige, even if they had doubts in their hearts, they had to carry out Zhao Dian's plan. But now, their measly 100-some people had managed to capture Li Tai from the Imperial Army. Tianying couldn't help but admire Zhao Dian's plans. Xianyi held the reins with one hand while his other hand was on Li Tai's shoulder, preventing the latter from escaping or making any small movements. When he heard this, he nodded in deep agreement and said, "Lord Guard's wisdom is indeed something that we are unable to fathom. However, Lord Guard's current situation is probably not good. We have to rush back to the inn as soon as possible and rescue Lord Guard." Tianying nodded and then turned around and shouted to the people behind him, "Everyone, pick up the pace. We must return to the inn in 30 minutes. Yes. The Turkic spies running behind Xian Yi and Tianying loudly replied. They had run here when they came, so naturally they had to run back when they went back. As for the warhorses Xian Yi and Tianying were riding, they had taken 2 from the Imperial Army during the chaos when they left the relay station. The situation had been so urgent that they hadn't had time to find more warhorses, so only Xian Yi and Tianying had been able to ride back. An inn? These Turkic spies are actually hiding in an inn? I just don't know which inn they are talking about in the city. Li Tai, who had his shoulder pressed down by Xian Yi, could not move at all. He could not help but ponder to himself after hearing the conversation between Xian Yi and Sky Eagle. From the moment he was captured until now, Li Tai hadn't cried out for help because he didn't think it was necessary. In this situation, there was no one in Sorespeak City who could save him from Xian Yi. Crying out for help would only be a waste of energy. He still needed to save his energy until he reached the lair of the Turkic spies and then find a chance to escape. They had run here when they came, so naturally they had to run back when they went back. As for the warhorses Xian Yi and Tianying were riding, they had taken 2 from the Imperial Army when they were leaving the relay station. The situation had been so urgent that they hadn't had time to find more warhorses, so only Xian Yi and Tianying had been able to ride them back. An inn? These Turkic spies are actually hiding in an inn? I just don't know which inn they are talking about in the city. Li Tai, who had his shoulder pressed down by Xian Yi, could not move at all. He could not help but ponder to himself after hearing the conversation between Xian Yi and Sky Eagle. From the moment he was captured until now, Li Tai hadn't cried out for help because he didn't think it was necessary. In this situation, there was no one in Sorespeak City who could save him from Xian Yi. Crying out for help would only be a waste of energy. He still needed to save his energy until he reached the lair of the Turkic spies and then find a chance to escape. Chapter 1962. Your Highness. This cry of Your Highness was tinged with shock. It was clear that the speaker had never imagined that he would run into Li Tai here. Looking in the direction of the voice, Li Tai was shocked when he saw the appearance of the leading knight. His eyes widened as he said with a face full of surprise, "Generally? Why are you in Taiyuan City?" This was none other than Li Junxian. After capturing Zhao Dian at Tongfu Inn, they had joined forces with Wang Chungu and his 100-some Wang clan shadow guards to escort Zhao Dian to the Bing Province Governor's residence. The Bing Province Governor's residence and Taiyuan Courier Station were both to the north of Taiyuan City, so Xian Yi and Li Junxian's forces had run into each other. What? It's His Highness? Behind Li Junxian, Wang Chungu couldn't help but be alarmed by their conversation. He hurriedly urged his horse forward and carefully looked. As expected, Li Tai was seated on the horse at the very front. He was both shocked and furious. Thus, Wang Chungu unsheathed his saber and shouted at Xian Yi and the others, "Li Tai, you're the first prince of the Tang Dynasty. Which scoundrel dares to kidnap His Highness? If you know what's good for you, immediately release His Highness and dismount. Otherwise, die." Although Wang Chungu had fought with Xian Yi during the day, the light in the night was poor. Moreover, Xian Ye's men were all dressed in black and had their faces covered. Without fighting, it was very difficult to identify them. Otherwise, die. The moment these words were spoken, the Wang clan shadow guards behind Wang Chungu and the Tensum cavalry led by Li Junxian unsheathed their weapons and began to confront Xian Ye's men. Commander Wang? Commander Wang, I hope you've been well since we last met. Wang Chungu didn't recognize Xian Yi, but Xian Yi recognized Wang Chungu. Xian Yi couldn't help but feel happy. He immediately took 2 steps forward and looked at Wang Chungu with a smile that wasn't a smile. Your Highness? This Your Highness was filled with great surprise. Clearly, the person who spoke had never expected to meet Li Tai here. Looking in the direction of the voice, Li Tai was shocked when he saw the face of the leading knight. He widened his eyes and said in surprise, Generally? Why are you in Taiyuan City? It was none other than Li Junxian. After capturing Zhao Dian at Tongfu Inn, they had joined up with Wang Chungu's 100-some Wang clan hidden guards to escort Zhao Dian to the Bing Province Governor's residence. The Bing Province Governor's residence and Taiyuan Courier Station were both to the north of Taiyuan City, so Xian Yi and Li Junxian's forces had met halfway. What? It's Your Highness? Behind Li Junxian, Wang Chungu couldn't help but be alarmed by their conversation. He hurriedly urged his horse forward and carefully looked. As expected, Li Tai was seated on the horse at the very front. He was both shocked and furious. Thus, Wang Chungu unsheathed his saber and shouted at Xian Yi and the others, Li Tai, you're the first prince of the Tang Dynasty. Which scoundrel dares to kidnap His Highness? If you know what's good for you, immediately release His Highness and dismount. Otherwise, die. Although Wang Chungu had fought with Xian Yi during the day, the light in the night was not good. Moreover, Xian Ye's men were all wearing black robes and had their faces covered. Without fighting, it was very difficult to tell who they were. Otherwise, die. The moment these words were spoken, the Wang clan hidden guards behind Wang Chungu and the Tensum cavalry led by Li Junxian unsheathed their weapons and began to confront Xian Ye's men. Commander Wang? Commander Wang, I hope you've been well since we last met. Wang Chungu didn't recognize Xian Yi, but Xian Yi recognized Wang Chungu. Xian Yi couldn't help but feel happy. He immediately took 2 steps forward and looked at Wang Chungu with a smile that wasn't a smile. Chapter 1963. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. Everything was done by my father and Wang Xinyuan. It has nothing to do with me. In a forest outside the mysterious manor, Wang Hong collapsed to the ground after being shot by an arrow in his thigh. Through the light from the torches scattered on the ground and the torches in the hands of the burly man in front of him, Wang Hong saw that the burly man in front of him was covered in blood. The knife in his hand was still dripping with blood. He looked like a killing god from hell. Wang Hong was so scared that he almost peed on the spot. At this time, he couldn't care about the pain in his thigh. He quickly cupped his hands and begged for mercy to the burly man in front of him. Your father? You're Wang Kuei's son? This burly man was naturally Han Lijing. As for the blood on his body, it was all the blood of the enemies he had fought before. He himself was not injured. Before this, although Han Lijing had never seen Wang Kuei, Wang Hong looked only in his 30s. He definitely couldn't be the rumored second elder of the Wang family. Therefore, after hearing Wang Hong beg for mercy, Han Lijing had this guess. Yes, but what my father did has nothing to do with me. I'm innocent. Wang Hong first nodded and admitted. Then, he quickly waved his hand and distanced himself from Wang Kuei. While they were talking, there was a rush of footsteps not far away. Then, a group of people holding torches came over. It was the Imperial Guards represented by Zhao Er. Master Han, all the remaining killers under Wang Kuei have been eliminated, but Wang Kuei is nowhere to be found. Zhao Eru came to Han Lijing, cupped his hands, and said, Han Lijing nodded. He pointed to Wang Hong on the ground and said to Zhao Eru, Wang Kuei has escaped in advance. This is Wang Kuei's son. Take him back first. Hearing Han Lijing say that Wang Kuei had escaped, Zhao Eru frowned slightly, but he still cupped his hands and said, Yes. After saying that, he waved his hand behind him. 2 imperial guards immediately came forward and lifted Wang Hong from the ground. Just as they were about to take him away, Han Lijing seemed to have suddenly thought of something. He quickly said, Wait. The 2 imperial army soldiers subconsciously stopped in their track. They saw Han Li appear in front of Wang Hong in a flash. He looked at Wang Hong and asked in a deep voice, Let me ask you. Before this, did anyone come over to inform you of the situation? They say that the Imperial Army is coming here to encircle and annihilate you? Hearing Han Lijing's question for no reason, Wang Hong shook his head blankly and said, No. Who's going to tip us off? What? No? How is this possible? Hearing this, Han Lijing's expression changed slightly, as if he had thought of something terrifying. He was stunned on the spot. Zhao Eru and the other members of the Imperial Army, including Wang Hong, were confused. After a moment of silence, Zhao Eru asked tentatively, Master Han, do you want me to bring people to chase after Wang Kuei? Zhao Eru knew a little about the situation of Zhao Dian and the other Turkic spies. According to what he knew, Wang Kuei was the key person in finding Zhao Dian's hiding place. The main purpose of the Imperial Army coming here this time was to capture Wang Kuei. Hearing this, Han Lijing immediately came to his senses and said anxiously, No! You can't chase after Wang Kuei. Quick! Return to the post house quickly. His Highness might be in danger. What? His Highness is in danger? Zhao Eru couldn't help but be shocked when he heard this. He quickly asked, Master Han, what do you mean by that? Han Lijing didn't have time to explain to him at this time. He waved his hand and called for the rest of the Imperial Army to take Wang Hong away. He said, There's no time to explain now. Brother Eru, leave a few of your men here to clean up the battlefield, and the rest of you follow me back to the post house immediately. The faster the better. Seeing that Han Lijing's expression was serious and didn't seem to be joking, Zhao Eru didn't dare to be careless. He quickly replied, Okay. This general will make the arrangements right away. After a while, except for 7 or 8 Imperial Army soldiers who stayed to clean up the battlefield, the rest of the Imperial Army soldiers who were not injured or only slightly injured got on their horses under the leadership of Han Lijing and Zhao Eru and rushed toward the post house in Taiyuan City. The team of more than 100 people was like a fire dragon. They first flitted through the small paths near Longshan and quickly arrived at the main road in the city. Master Han, what do you mean by what you said just now? Zhao Eru and Han Lijing were walking side by side. At this time, he finally had the chance to get to the bottom of things with Han Lijing. Hiya. Han Lijing controlled his horse and answered without turning his head. Previously, General Dugu arranged for us to spy on Wang Kuei's secret manor near Longshan in the prison of the post house. The entire plan was overheard by a man in black on the roof beam. According to General Dugu, this man in black is very likely an expert under Zhao Dian's command. After Zhao Dian learned of our plan, it's very likely that he will be one step ahead of us and go to Wang Kuei's manor to inform him. On our side, after General Dugu gave the order, it will take time to mobilize the troops, and it will also take a lot of time for the army to arrive at the manor. Zhao Dian will definitely have the opportunity to send someone to inform Wang Kuei in advance before we arrive at the manor. However, when I asked the Wang family boy just now, he said that no one had informed him before we arrived. This means that both General Dugu and I have misunderstood. Zhao Dian never thought of informing Wang Kuei from the beginning to the end. To him, Wang Kuei is just an abandoned pawn. Tonight, he will very likely take advantage of the time when we go to Wang Kuei's manor and the rear is empty to launch a sneak attack on the post house. What? Zhao Dian and the others might launch a sneak attack on the post house? After listening to Han Lijing's analysis, Zhao Er's eyes widened. A thick layer of fear and uneasiness quickly covered his face. Zhao Er took 2 deep breaths and said anxiously, "This matter should not be delayed. Why don't you let me choose a group of light cavalry and hurry back to the post house? Nothing must happen to His Highness." In a place like the city where the terrain was not open, the marching speed of a group of 100 cavalry was definitely not as fast as that of a group of 10 cavalry. Therefore, Zhao Er wanted to choose another small group of people to go back to the post house first. Han Lijing was also a veteran who had been on the battlefield and obviously understood this point. He nodded and said, "This old man will also go with you. I hope everything is not too late." The distance from the post house to Wang Kuei's manor near Longshan was actually not close. Even if they rode fast horses, it would take a long time to make the trip. Not to mention that the Imperial Guards had also spent a lot of time fighting with Wang Kuei's killers outside the mysterious manor. Han Lijing now had a very bad premonition in his heart. It was very likely that something had happened at the post house. Chapter 1964. Wang Clan Ancestral Home, Main Hall. Wang Bing, Wang Yu, Princess Tang and the Wang clan's 3rd, 4th, and 5th elders were all gathered in the main hall. Usually, they would have returned to their rooms to rest, but today, Wang Kuei's sudden escape had brought the entire Wang clan to the brink of death. The slightest carelessness could plunge the Wang clan into eternal damnation. Thus, all the core members of the Wang clan, including Wang Bing, were waiting in the main hall for news from Wang Qingwu. The atmosphere in the main hall was extremely oppressive. The maids and servants standing to the side didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. At this moment, a middle-aged steward walked in and whispered into Wang Yu's ear, "Master, the people we sent to Tongfu in have returned. Let Qingwu in." Wang Yu, who had been faintly fatigued, was jolted awake. He hastily sat up straight and said to the steward. His voice was rather loud, such that everyone in the main hall heard him. Wang Bing, Princess Tang and the other 3 Wang clan elders all turned their gazes in Wang Yu's direction. The steward had an awkward expression on his face. He first clasped his hands towards everyone in the room, then said, "My apologies. Commander Wang did not return. Only half of the people who went came back." "Only half came back? What's going on? Could Wang Qingwu have been ambushed at Tongfu Inn?" Wang Yu frowned and asked subconsciously. He knew that Wang Qingwu had brought over 200 of the Wang family's hidden guards to investigate the situation at the Tongfu Inn, but only half of them had returned. This meant that it was very likely that the other half had encountered some mishap. For over 100 Wang family's hidden guards to encounter mishap, it could only mean that a powerful force had set up an ambush for Wang Qingwu in the inn. The steward hurriedly shook his head. "No, that's not it. The mission this time went very smoothly. Commander Wang took the other half of the people to carry out another mission. I heard from the people who came back that they had a pleasant surprise and captured an extraordinary person." "Oh? Captured an extraordinary person? Quick, have someone come in and tell me what's going on." Hearing this, Wang Yu's eyes brightened. The worry on his face disappeared and was replaced with joy. Not only him, but the rest of the people in the main hall also secretly heaved a sigh of relief after hearing the old butler's words. "Yes, master," the old housekeeper responded and then walked to the door. He opened the door and shouted outside, "Wang Quan, come in." Yes. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone in the room heard the sound of hurried footsteps that were getting closer and closer. Soon, an ordinary-looking young man in a tight suit walked in. He clasped his fists and bowed to everyone in the room. Greetings, family head, princess, grand elder, and third elder. At this time, there's no need to be so courteous. Quickly tell me who you caught at Tongfu Inn? Before Wang Quan could finish his greeting, Wang Bing, who was sitting at the head of the table, waved his hand impatiently, interrupting him. Yes, Grand Elder. Wang Quan bowed as he received his orders, and then he didn't waste his breath and directly started narrating. An hour ago, Commander Wang led us to surround Tongfu Inn. We originally intended to capture the manager and owner of the inn, yet we never imagined that we would actually encounter two groups of people in battle there. Chapter 1965. Humph. Commander Wang, and this generally, if you don't open a path, then don't blame the sword for having no eyes. On the streets to the north of Taiyuan City, Xian Ye's men were locked in a tense standoff with the men led by Li Junxian and Wang Qingwu. After hearing Zhao Dian's words, Xian Yi clenched his teeth, a vicious light in his eyes. He pushed his dagger a little deeper into Li Tai's neck as he spoke to Wang Qingwu and Li Junxian. Just as Zhao Dian had said, as long as Li Tai was in his hands, Wang Qingwu and Li Junxian wouldn't dare to do anything to Zhao Dian. To Xian Yi, being able to directly save Zhao Dian in this situation was the best outcome. After all, Zhao Dian was their leader. If Zhao Dian couldn't return to the grasslands safely, then only death would await them. But it was clear that they couldn't win against more than 100 people, and this wasn't even considering the fact that Wang Qingwu and Li Junxian were two grandmaster experts. Whether it was one-on-one or in a group battle, they were no match for them. Thus, Xian Yi could only act shamelessly and use Li Tai's life to threaten and hold down Wang Qingwu and the others. You dare! Wang Qingwu was furious when he saw this. He raised the saber in his hand and pointed it at Xian Yi. Saber intent suffused the air, and a shapeless gust of saber wind directly slashed apart the air between Wang Qingwu and Xian Yi. Fortunately, there was no one standing in front of Xian Yi, otherwise, this gust of saber energy would have been able to heavily injure them. Xian Yi's brow creased. He hadn't expected Wang Qingwu to attack him in this situation. Did Wang Qingwu not care about Li Tai's life? At this critical moment, he didn't have time to think. He hurriedly raised his true qi, tapped his feet lightly, and dodged to the side with Li Tai. You! Xian Yi was just about to say something when his voice abruptly stopped. Because the saber aura that Wang Qingwu had just sent out had stopped abruptly when it was about to approach the position where he and Li Tai were standing. It was clear that Wang Qingwu's saber intent had been extremely restrained. He had no intention of harming Xian Yi. Retracting and releasing at will, Wang Qingwu's control over saber intent actually reached the level of freely withdrawing and releasing. Humiliation. Xian Yi felt humiliated. He recalled his actions just now. He was like a clown, being toyed with by Wang Qingwu. Do you really think I don't dare to kill him? A cold glint flashed across Xian Yi's eyes. He tightened his grip on the dagger in his hand and shouted angrily at Wang Qingwu. Wang Qingwu looked at Xian Yi with a mocking expression, pretending to be relaxed as he said, "If you really dared to make a move, you wouldn't have taken His Highness out of the way just now." Xian Yi was furious, but he was rendered speechless by Wang Qingwu's words. Commander Wang, generally, don't worry about me. As a prince of the Great Tang, I will never lower my head to a Turkic spy. Li Tai felt a slight pain on his neck, but he didn't cry out in pain. The children of the royal family matured early. Moreover, after studying under Li Zishuan for more than a year, his mind had matured a lot. Li Tai knew very well that the weaker he appeared now, the more savage his enemy would be, and the more disadvantageous the situation would be for him. Thus, he followed Wang Qingwu's words and shouted loudly. Chapter 1966. On the northern streets of Taiyuan City, Wang Qingwu and Li Junxian had failed to take back Li Tai from Xian Yi, and the two sides were once more in a stalemate. However, Wang Chungu and Li Juanxian's actions had thoroughly infuriated Xianyi. Xianyi had grabbed Li Tai by the neck and lifted Li Tai off the ground. His face was red and he was having trouble breathing. It was clear that he wouldn't be able to last for much longer. The situation was extremely dire. Perhaps just a moment ago, Xianyi didn't have any intention of taking Li Tai's life. After all, in this current situation, Li Tai could be said to be their protective talisman. If Li Tai died, not only would Zhao Dian die, but they would also be unable to leave Sourcepeak City. But now, after witnessing Wang Chungu and Li Juanxian's speed, Xianyi truly did want to take Li Tai down with him. He understood that if he didn't act decisively in the face of two top-class experts like Wang Chungu and Li Juanxian, the two of them might seize the chance. At that time, not only would Li Tai be rescued, they would all die. Gallop! Gallop! At this moment, a flurry of hooves came from the northwest. From the sound of it, there were quite a few people coming. Wang Chungu and Li Juanxian couldn't help but frown. Could it be the other Turkic spies in the city coming to reinforce Xianyi? Xianyi's expression changed, and he looked towards the northwest with vigilance. He knew that other than the people by his side, the only people left in the city were those who were captured by Wang Chungu with Zhao Dian. The cavalry that suddenly appeared in the northwest was definitely not one of them. Whoosh! Very quickly, a large army passed through the corner of the street and appeared on the street. When they saw the dense number of torches here, they quickly rushed over. In the blink of an eye, they had already arrived behind Xianyi's group. Who goes there? 10 meters away from Xianyi's group, the army stopped. The leader of the army looked over and loudly shouted, "Yes, Your Highness." Under the illumination of the torches, a young man beside the general took a closer look and saw Li Tai, who was being held in the air by Xianyi, desperately trying to pry Xianyi's large hands away. The young man's face was filled with shock, and he immediately roared, "Who are you, scoundrel? Quickly release His Highness." Li Tai was being held up in the air by Xianyi with one hand. From his angle, he could see the army coming from the north, as well as the two generals at the front of the army. He slapped Xianyi's arm and hand with all his strength as he said with difficulty, "Fang. Adjunct General. Fei Ying." The newcomers were none other than Fang Gongting from the Bing Province Barracks and Dugu Feiying, who had gone to the Bing Province Barracks to get reinforcements. On the streets to the north of Taiyuan City, Wang Chungu and Li Juanxian had failed to take back Li Tai from Xianyi, and the two sides were once more in a stalemate. However, Wang Chungu and Li Juanxian's actions had thoroughly infuriated Xianyi. At this moment, Xianyi had grabbed Li Tai by the neck and lifted Li Tai off the ground. His face was red and he was having trouble breathing. It was clear that he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Chapter 1967. To all of you, if you harm His Highness, the only path left for you is death. But if you release His Highness, this general guarantees that I will personally plead with His Majesty for mercy. Perhaps His Majesty will spare your lives on account of the fact that you are not the main culprits. Don't even think that this general will let you go, because if we allow you to take His Highness away, we will find it difficult to escape His Majesty's punishment, and we will all find it difficult to escape death. If we advance, we die, and if we retreat, we die. Thus, if you don't release His Highness, don't even think about leaving this place alive. Dugu Feiying had seen Xianyi threaten Li Tai with Li Juanxian's life to make him, Dugu Feiying and Wang Chungu open a path. After a few moments of thought, Dugu Feiying firmly refused. But Dugu Feiying was not being unreasonable in his refusal. He still patiently reasoned with Xianyi's group. First, he wanted to make clear his position and situation. In this situation, whether Xianyi snapped Li Tai's neck on the spot or they allowed Xianyi to take Li Tai away, they would have to endure Li Er's thunderous fury. This was why Dugu Feiying had said that, if we advance, we die, and if we retreat, we die. Of course, Dugu Feiying had another purpose in saying so much, and that was to stall for time and wait for more soldiers to arrive. Dugu Feiying and Fang Gongting had only brought a little more than 100 people to this place after seeing the signal fireworks and hearing the sounds of battle. The rest of the Bing province barracks were still searching for Wang Kuei's whereabouts, so Dugu Feiying wanted to stall for time and wait for more soldiers to arrive so that they could completely surround Xian Yi and the others. In addition, Dugu Feiying's words had also cut off the hopes of many Turkic spies. Before this, most of the Turkic spies by Xian Ye's side believed that as long as Li Tai was still in their hands, the authorities would definitely let them leave. However, they had overlooked one problem. Anyone who dared to let them leave with Li Tai would be punished by Li Er, and it was very likely that they would not be able to escape death. In this case, their plan to take Li Tai hostage and leave safely would be for naught. A pensive look appeared on Xian Ye's face. It was clear that he also felt that Dugu Feiying's words were reasonable. In this situation, both sides were in a deadlock where they would either die if they advanced or retreated. This one does not care if you live or die, but this one can swear on my life that as long as you prevent us from leaving and do not harm our Lord Guard, we will not harm a hair on King of Wei's head. Once we safely leave this place, we will King Emperor Tang. This way, you will be able to report to the Emperor of the Great Tang. General Dugu, what do you think? Otherwise, I'll snap King Wei's neck right now. That way, we'll all be buried together with King Wei. After a few moments of silence, Xian Yi raised his head and shouted at Dugu Feiying in the north. Although Dugu Feiying had said that if they released Li Tai, he would plead with Li Er for mercy, and perhaps Li Er would spare their lives because they were not the main culprits, Xian Yi did not want to rely on Dugu Feiying's vague promise. He wanted to take back the initiative. This time, it was Dugu Feiying's turn to fall silent. His words earlier had been to show that they were in a desperate situation. As the saying went, the unreasonable feared the reckless, and the reckless feared the reckless. People in desperate situations had no scruples, and such people were the most difficult to deal with. Xian Ye's words seemed to be taking a step back and giving Dugu Feiying and the others a path to survival, but in reality, this was not the case. After all, who knew how trustworthy Xian Ye's oath on his life was? What if Li Tai met with misfortune in their hands? Who would be able to bear the responsibility for this? A bunch of traitors who betrayed their ancestors. No matter how heavy their oaths are, they can't be trusted. Li Junxian coldly snorted as he mercilessly jeered. At the same time, he made his stance clear. He did not want to release Dugu Feifei. Upon hearing Li Junxian's voice, Dugu Feiying finally realized Li Junxian's existence. In Chang'an, he had met Li Junxian a few times, but the two of them weren't very familiar with each other. However, he had heard that this mysterious commander of 100 cavalry was extremely skilled in martial arts. In the younger generation, only Li Zishuan could contend against him. With Li Junxian holding down the fort, it was no wonder Xian Yi and the others had been unable to escape. Dugu Feiying said to himself, This one has already said what needs to be said. Both of us serve our own masters, so why make things difficult for each other and fight to the death? Xian Yi turned to Li Junxian and chuckled. If General Li doesn't believe me, then there's nothing I can do. But I will count to 5. If you don't open a path, this one will immediately send His Highness King of Wei on his way. If you don't believe me, you can try. After saying this, Xian Yi shot a glance at the pale and heavily injured Celestial Eagle. Celestial Eagle understood and hastily waved his hand. A group of Turkic spies immediately surrounded Xian Yi. This way, even if Li Junxian, Wang Chengwu, and Dugu Feiying launched another sneak attack, these meat shields would give Xian Yi enough time to kill Li Tai. Upon seeing Xian Yi's intentions, Li Junxian, Wang Chengwu, and Dugu Feiying grimaced. They understood that Xian Yi was about to get serious. If they didn't get out of the way, Li Tai's fate really did look grim. 1. 2. As Li Junxian, Wang Chungu, and Dugu Feiying hesitated, Xian Yi extended a finger and began to count. All of the Imperial Army soldiers, cavalrymen, and soldiers from the Bing province barracks held their breaths and stared nervously at their leader, waiting for the latter's order. Then, they would immediately charge with their weapons in hand. But none of Li Junxian, Wang Chungu, or Dugu Feiying dared to give such an order, because none of them were confident that they could save Li Tai before Xian Yi did. 3. 4. But Xian Yi seemed to have made up his mind, and he began to count faster and faster. Xian Yi was about to reach 5, and his hand was already on Li Tai's head. Everyone's hearts were in their throats, because there was a high chance that Li Tai's neck would be snapped and he would die. Stop! Li Junxian and Dugu Feiying both shouted at the same time. Xian Yi raised his head, glanced at Dugu Feiying, and then at Li Junxian, and silently waited. Dugu Feiying clenched his teeth and finally made a difficult decision. Just when he was about to speak, Li Junxian spoke first. "Release His Highness and this general will let you leave." Chapter 1968. Release His Highness and this general will let you leave. Li Junxian's words alarmed everyone. Not only were Wang Chungu and Dugu Feiying alarmed, even the Turkic spies led by Xian Yi flabbergasted. No one had expected Li Junxian to agree to let Xian Yi and the others go. One had to know that anyone who dared to give such an order would not have a good ending. Even if Li Tai was saved, Li Er would not show mercy to the one who had given the order. Thus, with these words, Li Junxian was essentially cutting off Li Junxian's future prospects. But just when Xian Ye's hand was about to snap Li Tai's neck, Li Junxian had no choice but to say these words. As the person of the highest status here, he couldn't just let Dugu Feiying say these words, could he? General Li. Dugu Feiying's face trembled in shock, and he looked at Li Junxian with 30% surprise and 70% gratitude. Just a moment ago, he had been about to say the same thing, but Li Junxian had spoken first. By saying this, Li Junxian had taken the risk for him. In this place, do your words count? Xian Ye's eyes flashed as he quickly recovered from his shock and indifferently asked Li Junxian. In truth, he still didn't know who Li Tai was. All he knew was that Li Tai and Dugu Feiying had both called him General Li. Li Junxian coldly and proudly said, "This general is Commander Li Junxian of the Great Tang's 100 Cavalry Division. My words naturally count. Today this general will let you leave, but I hope that you can keep your promise. If you break your oath, this general will definitely burn Zhao Dian to the ground." After saying this, Li Junxian threw his sword to the side. Swish! The sword stabbed into the ground an inch in front of Zhao Dian's feet. Zhao Dian was just a scholar, and though he was skilled in schemes, he was never as courageous as a martial artist. He was immediately frightened into taking 2 steps back. Commander of the Great Tang's 100 Cavalry Department, Li Junxian. Xian Yi and the others were startled. They realized that they had nearly kicked a metal plate. If the Imperial Army was an elite force, then the 100 Cavalry was the elite of the elite. The commander of the 100 Cavalry Department was an existence that ordinary people could not hope to reach. How could Xian Yi and the others have imagined that they would encounter the mysterious and incomparably elite cavalry in Sourcepeak City? Impossible! How could Baichi appear in Sourcepeak City? Xian Yi subconsciously thought. This was because ever since Zhao Dian had led them into Sourcepeak City, they knew the daily happenings in Sourcepeak City like the back of their hand. It was impossible for them to not have received any news about 100 riders entering the city. Although he didn't quite believe it, Xian Yi could see that Wang Chungu, Dugu Feiying, and the others were completely unperturbed by Li Junxian's report. It was clear that Li Junxian was not lying. Xian Yi knew that this was not the time to delve into Li Juanxian's identity. What was important was that he take Li Tai and leave this place as quickly as possible. Okay. Since that's the case, generally, please have your men open a path. This way, this one's previous promise will still stand. Now that he had made his decision, Li Junxian had no reason to hesitate. He waved his hand and ordered, "Everyone, stand to the sides and let them leave." Chapter 1969. The relay station was ambushed by bandits. My brother was in charge of the station, but His Highness was kidnapped. My brother is probably heavily injured, so this one must return to the relay station as quickly as possible. I'm afraid that I cannot accompany Advisor Fong in escorting Zhao Dian. After making some simple arrangements, Dugu Feiying clasped his fist to Fong Gongting and Li Junxian, an apologetic look on his face. Dugu Feiying was clearly aware in his heart that unless he had no other choice, it was impossible for his brother to watch as Li Tai was kidnapped by Xian Yi and the others. Now that Li Tai had fallen into the enemy's hands, it meant that Dugu Xian had very likely suffered a mishap. After all, Dugu Xian had already been heavily injured, and the rear of the relay station had been left defenseless. Dugu Xian would have found it very difficult to resist the ambush of Xian Ye's men. Therefore, at the moment he saw Li Tai being captured, Dugu Feiying had already realized that something might have happened to Dugu Xian. However, rescuing Li Tai was more important at that time, so he could only temporarily put aside the worries in his heart. Now that Xian Yi and the others had already left with Li Tai, his feelings of urgency to return to the inn grew. This general will accompany Advisor Fong in escorting Zhao Dian, so there will be no mishap. Feiying, you just need to return to the relay station. Once this general delivers Zhao Dian to the provincial governor's residence, I will personally pay a visit to General Dugu. Although this was Li Juanxian's first time meeting with Dugu Feiying in Taiyuan City, he already knew the situation at the relay station like the back of his hand. He nodded and spoke to Dugu Feiying. Okay. Then this one will take his leave. Dugu Feiying gave Li Junxian a grateful glance before turning to leave. As for Li Junxian and the others, they wasted no time, hurriedly escorting Zhao Dian back to the provincial governor's residence. Advisor Fong? You are. After passing through 2 streets, Li Junxian and Fong Gongting ran into a group of men. After some initial wariness, the leader of the group quickly recognized Fong Gongting in the light of the torches. Calling out in alarm, he rushed over and clasped his fist in greeting. Constable Fong. This group of people was the bailiffs of the provincial governor's residence, led by Constable Fong. Dugu Feiying had gone to the provincial governor's residence and the Bing province army camp to pass on Li Tai and Li Juanxian's orders, ordering Wang Liaoyuan and Fong Gongting to search the city overnight for Wang Kuei's whereabouts. Constable Fong had personally led his men to search the city. He had just heard from his subordinates that there were sounds of fighting on the streets to the north of the city, so he had hurried over. He had not expected to run into Fong Gongting's group. As for Li Junxian and the others, they wasted no time and quickly escorted Zhao Dian to the provincial governor's residence. Adjunct Fong? You guys are. After passing through 2 streets, Li Junxian and Fong Gongting encountered a group of men. After some initial wariness, the torchlight revealed that they were the leader. Li Juanxian's group wasted no time, hastily escorting Zhao Dian to the provincial governor's residence. Adjunct Fong? You guys are. After passing through 2 streets, Li Junxian and Fong Gongting encountered a group of people. After some initial wariness, the torchlight revealed that this group was the leader of the group. As for Li Junxian and the others, they wasted no time and quickly escorted Zhao Dian to the provincial governor's residence. Adjunct Fong? You guys are. After passing through 2 streets, Li Junxian and Fong Gongting encountered a group of people. After some initial wariness, the torchlight revealed that this group was the leader of the group. Chapter 1970. General Feiying, you're back? When the Imperial Guard saw Dugu Feiying, he was surprised at first, but then his face darkened. He opened his mouth hesitantly, as if he wanted to say something but didn't dare to. Dugu Feiying glared, and was about to get angry when the Imperial Guard stopped hesitating and pointed in the direction of Iching Pavilion. The general is seriously injured and on the verge of death. He is now lying in Iching Pavilion. General who has already gone to Huichun Hall to invite Dr. Gongsun. What? On the verge of death? Hearing that, Dugu Feiying felt as if he was struck by lightning. He was stunned on the spot. He had expected Dugu Xin to be heavily injured, but he had never expected Dugu Xin to be injured to such an extent. What did it mean to be on the verge of death? In this era where medical treatment was not very advanced, being on the verge of death was no different from being pronounced dead. Big brother! Dugu Feiying came back to his senses and pushed the Imperial Guard aside. Then, he ran as fast as he could in the direction of Iching Pavilion. As he ran, Dugu Feiying said to himself, "Big brother, nothing must happen to you." Unlike the other sons of aristocratic families, who were born to fight openly and secretly, Dugu Feiying and Dugu Xin were very close since they were young. It was said that an elder brother was like a father. In these years in the army, Dugu Feiying had received a lot of care from Dugu Xin. There were even a few times when Dugu Xin helped him. Dugu Feiying would have been beheaded. Therefore, the relationship between the two brothers was much closer than that of brothers in ordinary families. Now that he heard that Dugu Xin was on the verge of death, Dugu Feiying wanted nothing more than to take his place. Dugu Feiying ran as fast as he could and soon arrived at Dugu Xin's room in Iching Pavilion. When he opened the door, Dugu Feiying first smelled a strong smell of blood. Then he saw that the ground and the bed were covered in blood, and there was a person lying on the bed. Seeing that familiar figure, Dugu Feiying's heart ached and his nose ached. He quickly walked to the bed and knelt on both knees. Facing the person on the bed covered in blood, he said in a trembling voice, "Big brother, it's me. I'm Feiying. What happened to you? I'm back. Open your eyes and look at me." Dugu Feiying grabbed Dugu Xin's hand. He could feel that Dugu Xin's hand was extremely cold. His heart instantly felt as if it had fallen into an ice cave. Recalling how they had practiced martial arts together, joined the army together, punished evil together, and killed enemies together, Dugu Feiying could no longer hold back his tears. His eyes were red as he muttered, "It's all my fault, it's all my fault. I knew you were injured, but I still left you at the post house. I came back late. Big brother, open your eyes and look at me." Other than Iron Egg, there were other people in the room who were simply treating Dugu Xin's wounds. Seeing Dugu Feiying's grief, Iron Egg also felt bad. After thinking for a while, he went forward and comforted him. Commander who has already gone to invite Miracle Dr. Gongsun from Huichun Hall. Dr. Gongsun was able to cure General Dugu of such a complicated poison in the morning. It would be the same this time. As long as Dr. Gongsun was here, General Dugu would definitely be fine. General Feiying, don't be too sad. Although Bruiser was Li Zixuan's disciple, he mainly learned martial arts under Li Zixuan's tutelage. As for medical knowledge, he didn't receive any of Li Zixuan's teachings. Therefore, he couldn't do anything about Dugu Xin's injuries. He could only pin his hopes on Gong's son Liang. Chapter 1971. What did you say? Turkic spies attacked the courier station, and His Highness King of Wei was taken away? In the back hall of the Bing provincial governor's mansion in Taiyuan, Wang Liaoyuan was sitting in front of a table, anxiously waiting for the news of the bailiffs who had gone to the city to look for Wang Kuei. Unexpectedly, he received such a bad news. Wang Liaoyuan was so shocked that he stood up immediately. Yes, this news was grievous news for him and all of Taiyuan's officialdom. The one who had come to deliver this news was none other than one of the Yamen runners serving Constable Feng. Constable Feng's men had run into Li Juanxian's group, so Constable Feng had volunteered to lead the way. Of course, while leading the way, Constable Feng had not forgotten to send a report back to the governor's residence so that Wang Liaoyuan could think of a countermeasure and mentally prepare himself. It's like this. Moreover, Advisor Feng will be escorting Zhao Dian here soon. I hear that he's accompanied by 100 cavalry commanders. The Yamen runner cautiously said upon seeing Wang Liaoyuan's nasty complexion. It's over. It's all over. Wang Liaoyuan's face was ghastly pale, and it was no exaggeration to say that he looked like he had lost his parents. A middle-aged man dressed as a scholar standing next to him began to console him. "My lord, there is no need to be so pessimistic. The gates of Taiyuan City are tightly shut, and not even a fly can get out, much less a person. Now that Zhao Dian is in Advisor Feng's hands, even if those Turkic spies capture His Highness, they won't dare to do anything to him. Moreover, they won't be able to leave Taiyuan City. In this case, we still have a chance to save His Highness. In addition, His Highness was taken away by the Imperial Army. Even if His Majesty blames you, he won't be able to blame you. My lord has not made any major contributions in your administration, but neither have you made any minor mistake. This Wu is confident that His Majesty will not punish you too harshly. Shut your mouth." The first half of the middle-aged scholar's words had been reasonable, but the second half had taken a turn for the worse. Wang Liaoyuan couldn't help but interrupt. "Since this official is the governor of a province, I have the responsibility to protect the people. Now that something has happened to the king of Wei under this official's jurisdiction, how can this official escape punishment? Besides, apart from His Highness the Crown Prince, His Highness Wei Wang could be considered His Majesty's most favored prince. If something were to happen to His Highness in Taiyuan City, no one in Taiyuan City would be able to avoid censure. Right now, the most important thing is to think of a way to rescue His Highness and not push the responsibility away. Since the Turkic spies were able to kidnap the King of Wei from the Imperial Army, this means that the Imperial Army must have suffered heavy losses tonight. If we push the blame to the Imperial Army, this official's conscience will not be at ease. Although Wang Liaoyuan was a conservative official and could be a bit stubborn sometimes, he still had the spirit of a scholar and a sense of justice in him. Provincial Governor, you are right. I have misspoken. The middle-aged scholar blushed at Wang Liaoyuan's words. He cupped his fists and apologized profusely. Wang Liaoyuan was just about to say something when a clamor came from the front yard of the provincial governor's residence. He sternly said, "It should be Advisor Feng. Let's go. Follow this official to the front yard." "Yes." The people in the room replied and followed Wang Liaoyuan to the front yard. Chapter 1972. These Turkic thieves are so bold. Not only did they attack the posthouse, they even kidnapped His Highness King of Wei. They are truly lawless. In the Wang clan ancestral home, Wang Yu and the other upper echelons of the Wang clan were first shocked when they heard the news brought back by Wang Chengwu, and then they slapped the table and stood up in anger. Wang Bing's face was as calm as water. He furrowed his brows and said in a deep voice, "These Turkic spies are truly scheming. Taking advantage of the fact that the Imperial Army is searching for second brother in the city and the rear of the posthouse is empty, they launched a sneak attack on the posthouse. This timing is perfect. If this plan came from Zhao Dian, then this Han man called Zhao Dian cannot be underestimated." Princess Tang couldn't help but say, "But according to Wang Chengwu, this Zhao Dian has already been escorted to the provincial governor's residence, and their leader has been captured." What do these Turkic spies have to fear? With so many guards in the city, no matter where they hide, they will be found. Wang Bingqing snorted softly and said, "Perhaps this Zhao Dian also thinks the same way. We thought that after capturing him, the other Turkic spies would not dare to act rashly. But in his eyes, since your Highness has fallen into his hands, we also do not dare to act rashly. Even if we find the hiding place of the Turkic spies, it will be very difficult to rescue His Highness from their hands. Zhao Dian is certain that we won't dare to risk His Highness' life. Previously, most of his men went to attack the post house while he took a small group to guard the inn. Now that I think about it, he wanted to use His Highness as bait to delay the 100 cavalry. This person's schemes are profound and his methods are ruthless. They are all different from ordinary people and cannot be underestimated." Wang Yu nodded and said, "Father's words are correct. Finding the hiding place of the Turkic spies is not difficult for the Wang clan and the provincial governor's residence, but the difficulty lies in the fact that they will threaten us with His Highness' life. Zhao Dian is just a lackey under Xieli. If he dies, then so be it. But His Highness is one of the most favored princes of the present emperor. We cannot let anything happen to him in Taiyuan City. If that's the case, then it will be difficult." Princess Tang unfrowned and said worriedly, "According to what husband and father said, we can only be in a deadlock with these Turkic spies?" However, Sourcepeak City was a major city in the north. They couldn't keep the city gates sealed forever, right? The city gates would have to be reopened sooner or later. If he could not save Qin Kai before that, he was afraid that the thieves would secretly move Qin Kai out of the city. Besides, Qin Kai had never suffered much since he was young. Who knew what kind of suffering he would suffer in the hands of those bandits? What if I can't take it? At this point, Princess Tong An's expression became sorrowful and she was on the verge of tears. No matter what, she was still a member of the Tang imperial family. Normally, Li Tai would have to call her grandaunt. Although she and Li Tai had not seen each other many times, Li Tai had come to her husband's territory this time, and something had happened here. As his grandaunt, she felt uneasy. "Madam, you don't need to worry too much. This old man has heard about His Highness in recent years. He was able to lead Yanhuang College's teachers and students to the north to build a telegraph relay station. This shows that he is not as delicate as you think." Seeing this, Wang Yu hurriedly comforted Princess Tong An. Then, he stood up and said, "Tonight's matter is of great importance. Whether it is for public or private reasons, the Wang clan cannot stay out of it and watch with folded arms. This old man must now make a trip to the provincial governor's residence to discuss the matter of rescuing the Prince of Wei with provincial governor Wang." Chapter 1973. Humph. This old man had clearly told him not to use martial arts for 7 days, but it hasn't even been a day yet. Not only did he use martial arts, but he also injured himself all over. He doesn't know how to take care of his own body. This old man will not save this kind of patient. Even if I save him, it will be in vain. Within Rejuvenation Hall, after hearing Hu Longjiang's complaints and pleas, Gong Sun Liang's face darkened and he angrily rebuked. In the morning, he had made an exception for Dugu Xian out of respect for Wang Yu, but now, Dugu Xian had disobeyed his doctor's orders and used force on others. As a doctor, he was naturally furious. After all, no doctor liked patients who disobeyed their doctor's orders, and Gong Sun Liang was no exception. Secondly, Gong Sun Liang, who lived a very disciplined life and never stayed up late, had already fallen asleep, but he was woken up by Hu Langjiang and the others. Furthermore, Hu Langjiang wanted him to treat Dugu Xian again, so how could he possibly give Hu Langjiang a good look? He was already being extremely courteous by not ordering his subordinates to drive Hu Longjiang's group out of the clinic. "Dr. Gongsun, there is something you do not know. Tonight, a group of bandits attacked the courier station, wanting to harm His Highness King of Wei. There were several top-class experts among the bandits, and General could not bear to see our ordinary soldiers slaughtered by these experts. With no other choice, he endured the pain and forced himself to fight. But he had never imagined that the enemy would outnumber him, and all of them were extraordinarily skilled. Although General fought without retreating, in the end, his 2 fists were outnumbered, and he was heavily injured. This who is a crude man and does not know how to speak pretty words, but in Sorespeak City, only Dr. Gongsun has the ability to treat General. If Dr. Gongsun can save General's life, this whose life will be yours. Hu Langjiang once more cupped his fists. Although they were completely capable of kidnapping Gongsun Liang and taking him back to the courier station, regardless of whether Gongsun Liang agreed or not, they would have thoroughly offended Gongsun Liang. If that happened, Gongsun Liang would be even less willing to treat Dugu Xian. Thus, unless there was no other choice, Hu Langjiang did not want to use such extreme methods. Dr. Gongsun, please treat our general. As Hu Langjiang's voice fell, the 4 Imperial Army soldiers behind him hurriedly cupped their fists to Gongsun Liang. There was one thing that Hu Langjiang was right about. Dugu Xian was willing to go out and fight despite his injuries because he didn't want these ordinary soldiers to be slaughtered by a top-class expert like Fang Xianyi. This was true love for the soldiers, and the Imperial Army would remember this affection deeply in their hearts. Seeing this scene, Gongsun Liang could not help but feel a little moved. Although Dugu Xian did not follow the doctor's advice and did not take care of himself, which made him, the doctor in charge, very angry, after listening to Hu Langjiang's words, he felt that Dugu Xian was indeed a good man who valued loyalty, and a good general who cherished his subordinates. Just as he was about to open his mouth and make an exception for Dugu Xian, the sound of horse hooves suddenly came from outside the clinic. Bang! 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 Gongsun Liang was puzzled as he wondered why his clinic was so lively tonight, with uninvited guests coming one after another. Soon after, he heard several people walking toward the front yard. Before he could have a servant go out to see what was going on, there was a knock on the door. Is Dr. Gongsun in? This one is Wang Chengwu, and I have an important matter to discuss with you. Chapter 1974. This old Hu, why hasn't he brought Dr. Gongsun over yet? At the same time, at the post house, Dugu Feiying was impatient as he looked at Dugu Xian, who was lying motionless on the bed. He paced back and forth in the room and couldn't help but ask anxiously. From the contact this morning, this Dr. Gongsun has a strange temperament. I'm afraid it won't be easy to invite him. Hu Langjiang and the others must have run into a wall in the rejuvenation hall. Iron Egg was naturally extremely anxious. Calculating the time, if nothing unexpected happened, Hu Langjiang and the others should have brought Gongsun Liang back to the post house by now. But things did not go as planned, which meant that Hu Langjiang and the others did not have a smooth trip. Thinking of the treatment process of Dugu Xian in the morning, Iron Egg guessed. Hearing this, Dugu Feiying's expression became even more anxious. He stood still and happened to stop in front of a table. He could not help but slam his fist on the table and say in exasperation, "This group of idiots at a time like this, don't they know how to think of some special methods? Even if Dr. Gongsun does not want to come, we have to kidnap him. Big Brother's life is in danger, and the later we treat him, the more dangerous it will be." It was not that Dugu Feiying liked to take advantage of power and bully others, but the person lying on the bed in front of him was too important to him. He was simply too worried. Although Iron Egg understood Dugu Feiying's mood at the moment, he also understood that the method Dugu Feiying proposed was extremely unfeasible. Because treating and saving people was not like anything else. As long as Gongsun Liang was not willing to save him, even if they tied him up and put a knife to his neck, he would not do anything. Iron Egg believed that with Gong Sun Liang's strange temperament, it was completely possible for him to do such a thing. General Dugu's external injuries have been treated by the military doctor. As long as he does not continue to bleed, he should be able to hold on until Dr. Gongsun arrives. General Feiying need not worry too much. After a moment of silence, Iron Egg comforted. Dugu Feiying nodded in annoyance but didn't say anything. At this time, the two of them had no other choice but to wait because Gong Sun Liang was the best doctor in Sorespeak City. Moreover, in Sorespeak City, only Gong Sun Liang could cure the poison on Xian Ye's hidden weapon. Stop! Who are you? At this moment, a shout came from the gate of the courier station. The courier station had just experienced a fierce battle. The commander was injured and unconscious, and Li Tai had also been captured. Morale was at its lowest, and the courier station was at its quietest. At the same time, the Imperial Army was at its most vigilant. Dugu Feiying and Iron Egg, who were in the room, heard the shout clearly. Dugu Feiying's face flashed with vigilance. He frowned and said to Iron Egg, "Brother Iron Egg, please take care of my big brother for me. I'll go out and take a look." Subconsciously, he thought that someone had come to sabotage the post house again. He couldn't help but wish that it was the same group of Turkic spies from before. Then, he could directly avenge Dugu Xen. No problem. General Feiying, be careful. Although Iron Egg was very curious about who had come, he understood that Dugu Xen could not be left alone. Therefore, he did not hesitate and nodded in agreement. Yes. Dugu Feiying replied with an then pushed open the door and went straight out. Chapter 1975. According to Li Tai's plan, there were 2 groups of 8 people left in Taiyuan City to gather supplies for the teachers and students on Dragon Mountain. There were 4 teachers and 4 students in the 2 group. Of course, Iron Egg and Li Tai were not included. They were both members of the same group. After tonight's incident, Mo Chue felt that it would be safer to settle all the students of the academy in Dragon Mountain. He had gone up Dragon Mountain to take a look. The terrain there was easy to defend and hard to attack. The Imperial Guards had placed numerous open and hidden sentries on the mountain path. It was impossible for the Turkic spies to kill their way to the top of the mountain without 1,000 or 800 soldiers. In comparison, although the post house was located in a bustling city, the Imperial Army couldn't defend against the sneak attack of over 100 experts tonight. This was because the walls surrounding the post house weren't tall and couldn't stop an expert like Xian Yi. If the other party wanted to sneak in, it would be very difficult for the several hundred Imperial Army soldiers in the post house to stop them. Therefore, Mo Chue wanted to move all the students to Dragon Mountain tomorrow. Firstly, it was safer there. Secondly, the Imperial Army could arrange most of their forces on Dragon Mountain and did not have to continue to disperse their forces. As for the safety of himself and the other teachers, Mo Chue could not care less about it now. These students with unlimited potential were the future of Yanhuang College and the future of the Tang Empire. He could not watch them get into trouble here. This was also what Mo Huai, Li Gang, Yen Silu, and the others had repeatedly told him before he left Dragon Mountain. No matter what, the safety of the students of the academy had to be the top priority. Since Mr. Mo has made up his mind, I will personally escort the rest of the students to Dragon Mountain tomorrow morning. Dugu Feiying looked deeply at Mo Chue. Seeing the latter's firm and resolute eyes, he paused and clasped his hands solemnly. He understood that Mo Chue had already made up his mind. There was no need for him to persuade him. It was impossible to persuade him. Mr. Mo Chue Bruiser opened his mouth, but when he met Mo Chue's gaze, he swallowed the words that were already at the tip of his tongue. Li Junxian could see all their actions and expressions, and he was filled with admiration for this pure teacher-student relationship and selfless devotion. But he had not forgotten his goal. Glancing at the motionless Duguxian, he stepped forward and sternly asked, "Brother Feiying, can I examine Brother Dugu's injuries?" Hearing this, Dugu Feiying hurriedly turned sideways and extended his hand. "Of course, generally, please." Even though Li Junxian wasn't a famous doctor, not even a physician, he was still a supreme expert of the Grandmaster realm. Perhaps he could use his Jinqi to regulate his meridians and alleviate Duguxian's injuries? Li Junxian nodded. With a grave expression, he stepped forward and sat on the edge of the bed. He extended his right hand and placed it on Duguxian's pulse. A gentle stream of Jinqi flowed through the meridians on Duguxian's wrist and into his body. It was like a gentle spring rain that silently moistened the body. Just as Dugu Feiying had thought, Li Junxian was no physician, nor had he read any medical book. But since ancient times, medicine and martial arts had always been closely related. Those who practiced martial arts mostly knew how to treat simple external and internal injuries, and a martial arts expert of his level was naturally much more capable of saving lives than ordinary martial artists. Chapter 1976. Humph. Just now, this old man heard that someone wanted to kidnap me from Rejuvenation Hall. Young General truly has the authority of an official. In the guest house, Gong Sun Liang did not appreciate Dugu Feiying's warm welcome. His face was cold as he mocked Dugu Feiying as he walked into the room. No matter how fearless Dugu Feiying was, he didn't dare to act recklessly in front of the old man in front of him. This was because this old man was related to the life and death of his brother. "Mr. Gongsun, you've misunderstood. I was just worried about my brother's injury. That's why I spoke without thinking. Please be magnanimous and don't hold it against me." Who would have thought that the usually reckless Dugu Feiying would lower his head to an old man? If the Imperial Army soldiers outside saw this, their eyes would probably pop out of their sockets. "Humph. Today, all of you are good people. Only this old man is a bad person. Someone wanted to kidnap this old man, and someone wanted to use Wang Situ to pressure this old man. Humph. Could it be that in your eyes, this old man is a cold-blooded and heartless person who would watch someone die?" Gong Sun Liang ignored Dugu Feiying's apology, and as he walked toward Duguxian's bed, he grumbled to himself. This old man was naturally referring to the actions of Hu Langjiang and Wang Chungu in Rejuvenation Hall. And who else could this Wang Situ he spoke of be but Wang Bing? "Sir, of course not." Dugu Feiying instinctively wanted to say no, but fortunately, he reacted quickly and stopped the carriage. Otherwise, if he said yes, the old man might have just turned around and left. "Ha! If an old man like you isn't a heartless person who would watch someone die, then no one is." Although Dugu Feiying was all smiles, he couldn't help but mentally curse. Everyone in the room except Li Junxian couldn't help but twitch their lips upon hearing this conversation, but they didn't dare to say anything. The impression that Gong Sun Liang had left on them this morning was truly too poor. "Humph. In sincere words." Gong Sun Liang glanced at Dugu Feiying but did not intend to dwell on this issue. He sat on the side of the bed and began to check on Duguxian's injuries. In fact, Dugu Feiying and the others had really misunderstood Gong Sun Liang in this matter. Previously in the Huichun Hall, after Hu Lang roughly explained why Duguxian was injured again, Gong Sun Liang, who was deeply moved, had already planned to immediately go to the post house to treat Duguxian. But who would have thought that Wang Qingwu would come to the Huichun Hall with Wang Bing's instructions? With this, Gong Sun Liang was like an unscrupulous doctor who would not save a dying person. "Mr. Gongsun, how is my elder brother?" Gong Sun Liang first flipped Duguxian's eyelids, then looked at Duguxian's tongue, chest, and other parts, before finally placing his right hand on Duguxian's pulse. Not long after, he withdrew his hand and stood up. At this time, Dugu Feiying hurriedly asked. Alas! Gong Sun Liang shook his head with a heavy heart. Then, he complained, you knew that he had not recovered from his injuries, so why did you let him get injured again? And such a serious injury at that? The current situation is really a little tricky. I was wrong in this matter, Dugu Feiying said in shame. My elder brother was poisoned with the same poison as this morning. Mr. Gongsun, since you were able to save my elder brother this morning, you can definitely save him now. I beg you, you must save my elder brother. Chapter 1977. Lend it to me? How do you want to borrow it? Gong Sun Liang raised an eyebrow in confusion when he heard that Li Junxian could lend him his internal energy. This old man is not a martial artist and has never learned how to circulate internal energy. My 8 meridians have not been opened. Even if you transfer your internal energy to this old man will not be able to use it, much less use it. Iron Egg also looked in confusion at Li Junxian. He had subconsciously believed that Li Junxian's method of borrowing internal energy was the guiding internal energy that Gong Sun Liang had spoken of. This method had a certain degree of feasibility, because when Sun Simiao had treated Li Gang, Li Zixuan had used this method. However, after listening to Gong Sun Liang's analysis, Bruiser began to feel that this method wasn't reliable. This was because Gong Sun Liang was different from Sun Simiao. He had never practiced any qi cultivation technique. He was just an ordinary person. His meridians couldn't withstand the true qi of an internal martial artist. Li Junxian knew that the situation was urgent. After all, Dugu Xian's life was still in danger, so he did not keep Gong Sun Liang in suspense. What I mean is, Sir Gong Sun Liang, you seal his acupoints while I use my internal energy to control the needles. Although I am not a doctor and have never learned any acupuncture techniques, I know the various acupoints of the human body like the back of my hand. Sir Gong Sun Liang can choose a relatively simple acupuncture technique and then tell me when to insert the needles into which acupoints on Brother Dugu's body. I will do as you say, and after the acupuncture, I will control the needles and channel internal energy into Brother Dugu's various acupoints to force out the poison. I am confident that with my control over internal energy, there will be no problem with this step. The key is still the acupuncture. Gong Sun Liang couldn't help but blow his beard and glare. Heh! Sir's tone is truly arrogant. You think that as long as you know the right acupoints, you can perform acupuncture? Truly arrogant and ignorant. It must be understood that when a doctor performs acupuncture, the position, angle, and strength of each needle, as well as the twisting, tracing, flicking, scraping, shaking, and shaking are all extremely important. Without tens of thousands of times of practice, it is very easy to make mistakes while performing acupuncture, and this isn't even considering that Sir has never performed acupuncture before. For a doctor, a small mistake can cost the patient their life. Therefore, this old man doesn't agree with your method. The old man's words were not at all polite. After all, Li Junxian was the commander of 100 cavalry. Not only did no one in Chang'an dare to offend him, even the provincial governors of other provinces did not dare to speak rudely to him. But this Gong Sun Liang was not even willing to give him any face, leaving him with cuts and bruises all over, and this was under the condition that Gong Sun Liang had no idea who Li Junxian was. Of course, even if he had known Li Junxian's identity beforehand, he would not have shown any mercy. After all, the method Li Junxian had proposed just so happened to be within his field of expertise. He would not allow anyone to touch his bottom line in his field of expertise. The atmosphere in the room suddenly froze. Dugu Feiying gave Li Junxian an apologetic glance. After all, he was the one who had invited Gong Sun Liang, and Li Junxian had good intentions. There was no reason for him to suffer Gong Sun Liang's rebuke. Li Junxian did not notice Dugu Feiying's apologetic gaze. He stared at Gong Sun Liang and sternly said, he looked straight at Liang Liang and sternly said, when using needles, a doctor truly should be extremely careful and not make the slightest mistake. I fully agree with this. But in Brother Dugu's current situation, only by using needles to force out the poison can we save his life, and there is no time to lose. I presume that Sir Gongsun agrees with this. Gongsun Liang expressionlessly nodded, clearly agreeing with Li Junxian's view. Seeing this, Li Junxian continued, but the problem lies in the fact that Taiyuan City does not have a doctor who understands acupuncture and also has the energy of the inner sect. What this general said just now was merely a temporary measure. Although it is somewhat risky, I will do my best to follow Sir Gongsun's instructions and use every needle. Moreover, there is no better method. If we leave Brother Dugu alone, he's doomed. Dugu Feiying couldn't help but deeply frown. Just as Li Junxian had said, there was no better method than this. If they didn't make a decision soon, Dugu Xian's last hope of saving him would be snuffed out. Gong Sun Liang scowled. Humph. Sophistry. Great general's suffering today is fate. This old man's needles are only used to save people, not to kill. Then will Sir Gongsun just watch as Brother Dugu is poisoned to death? At this point, Li Junxian stopped being polite and harshly said, Sir Gongsun has practiced medicine and saved countless lives over the years, earning the reverence of all the people of Taiyuan City. This general can understand why Sir Gongsun is unwilling to bear the stain of treating people to death. This general can understand, but this general cannot just watch as Brother Dugu dies. Today, as long as Brother Feiying nods his head and is willing to accept this general's treatment method, this general is willing to do everything in his power. If an accident occurs, this general will bear the crime of treating someone to death. When the time comes, if Brother Feiying wants to kill me or torture me, I, Li Junxian, will do as you please. Hearing this, Gong Sun Liang's face flushed red and he flew into a rage. This was because Li Zixuan's words had indeed hit the nail on the head. As a doctor, and the most respected doctor in Sorespeak City at that, he did not want a case of someone dying from his treatment. This would not only ruin the reputation of the Rejuvenation Hall, but it would also ruin his, Gong Sun Liang's, reputation. Gong Sun Liang pointed at Li Junxian and was about to curse him when Dugu Feiying hastily said, General Li's words are too serious. We are both clear about my brother's current situation. The situation is critical and urgent. Although General Li's method is not the best method, it is indeed the best and only method at the moment. I am willing to make this decision for my brother. I hope that General Li and Mr. Gongsun can abandon the prejudice in terms of the rescue method and cooperate with each other to make full use of our strengths. Feiying is not an unreasonable person. Whether or not my brother is cured, the two of you will not need to bear any responsibility. On the contrary, the entire Dugu clan will be grateful to the two of you for saving him. I beg of you. Dugu Feiying solemnly clasped his fist at Li Junxian and Gong Sun Liang. He knew that these two had their own difficulties and positions, and he also knew that Dugu Xian's condition could not be delayed any longer. He had to treat him as soon as possible. These two people were the ones in Taiyuan City most likely to save his big brother. If Dugu Xian did not survive in the end, he would not hold a grudge against them. After all, Gongsun Liang had just saved Dugu Xian's life this morning, and Li Junxian had ordered the soldiers to release Xian Ye's group a little more than an hour ago. This was tantamount to helping him take the blame. Thus, these two had already done him a favor, and if they were willing to work together to save Dugu Xian, it would be yet another great favor. How could Dugu Feiying repay kindness with enmity? Sensing the sincerity in Dugu Feiying's words, Gong Sun Liang calmed down and gave Dugu Feiying a profound glance. Young general, are you sure? Dugu Feiying firmly nodded. I'm sure. I ask that Sir Gong Sun Liang act once more. Gong Sun Liang couldn't help but take in a deep breath. As if he had made an important decision, he nodded. Okay. Since that's the case, this old man will join hands with this junior. The juniors nowadays dare to charge, to act, and to take responsibility. Very good. He was naturally speaking of Li Junxian. Li Junxian's words, just now, had left Gong Sun Liang rather shaken once he had calmed down. Sir Gong Sun Liang is wise and righteous. I ask that Sir Gong Sun Liang not be stingy with his instruction during the acupuncture treatment. Li Junxian clasped his fist. Gong Sun Liang nodded in agreement, and then he turned to the young boy next to him and said, Xiao Bao, take out the needles. Yes, Master. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.